Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Wednesday, February 21st, 2024, 5:15 regular Planning Commission meeting. The meeting will now come to order. Tonight's invocation will be given by Ms. Mosayeb, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be given by Mr. Flores. Everyone, please rise.
Dear Lord, we thank you for the ability to come before you with this commission. We invite you to be here with us this evening and to grant us wisdom with each case and situation that is presented before us tonight. In your name we pray.
And now for the Pledge of Allegiance. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
All right, commissioners, please announce any item you're recusing from due to a conflict of interest prior to the item being heard. All right. Secretary, will you please conduct a roll call vote?
Sure. Commissioner Leon,
Here.
Commissioner Mendez,
Present.
Vice Chairperson Barcena,
Present.
Chairperson De La Rosa,
Present.
and please note Commissioner Boada will be excused from today's meeting unless there are any objections.
Thank you very much. Staff has requested to move the discussion items prior to the public hearing item is heard. May I please have a motion to approve the agenda with this change?
What was the motion for again?
Motion to move the discussion items prior to the public hearing items being heard.
I'd like to make a motion to move the discussion items prior to the,
Public.
Yeah.
All right, may I have a second?
Hi, Commissioner Mendez, second the motion.
Anyone opposed? Seeing no one supposing that, the agenda will be approved with this change. All right. All right, staff, can we have the first discussion item?
Yes, Chair. Good evening. My name is Stephen Jones, City Planner, and we'll be looking at the first discussion item, which is a request for direction on impacted parking in the community public rights of way. We do have a presentation quickly. That should be arriving momentarily. Oh. And while we're waiting for that, I will just go ahead and start. Staff members have received complaints, various complaints about parking vehicles in the public rights of way for inordinate amounts of time. And that impacts residents and patrons of businesses with lack of access to suitable and available parking. And during this presentation, your commission will hear background on recent activity to address these complaints and issues related to provisions regulating parking, staff's preliminary conclusions and possible alternative solutions for which we're requesting direction, and answers from solutions and surrounding jurisdictions, and then options for recommended action today. I'll take it. Thank you. Right on time. So this is the wrong line. I apologize. Ooh, number 6. This is number 7. There's a parking presentation, for item number 6. My apologies. And so this item your hearing is a request to consider providing staff with directions to develop an ordinance for the council's action or to receive and file a report with no further action. So recent activity includes ordinance number 897, which was to authorize the issuance of driveway apron parking permits. Ordinance number 913 established a residential parking permit program. And ordinance number 937 expanded definitions of automobile repair facilities and added provisions for queuing and storage of vehicles. The general plan does provide for the protection in the city's blueprint for the essential need of serviceable and accessible public infrastructure for equity and equal use in as much as that's possible. So I'm going on, oh, it went away. Thank you. And so again, we're asking that you either receive and file or provide direction. And September 9th, 2019 was the ordinance 897, June 14th, 2021 was ordinance 913, and October 23rd, 2023 was ordinance number 937. And so as you can see, over the last few years, we've been doing different things to address parking that's impacted for both residents and businesses. And so as I said, the general plan provides protection in the city's blueprint for the essential need of serviceable and accessible public infrastructure for equity and equal use in as much as that's possible. The land use element, circulation element, and safety element all address parking. So far, the immediacy of the need still remains, since businesses and property owners need time to transition in feasible ways with all the different ordinances that have come into play, and many requirements and standards would remain untriggered until such time as an event serving as a catalyst for updates like tenant improvements or of a certain value, business and or name changes, or certain kinds of rebuilds. So the ordinances are in place, but a lot of the uses remain unchanged and very little occurs to address the parking issue. So again, the immediacy of the need still remains. There have been no residential parking permit districts approved, and few residential drive apron permits have been issued. Time limits and parking meters as supplements to regulations may prove to be useful in addressing the impact of reduced availability. So the ordinance intent and purpose would be that if you would direct staff to develop an ordinance to further address parking, staff would work with code enforcement, public works, and the police department, community service officers to consult on language that would address off-street parking and access, on-street parking, and the business license regulatory permit processing. There's no one-size solution that solves every issue. Thus, multiple ordinances are already crafted, as you can see, to provide regulation of private property to the benefit of the public space. However, together with these pieces of the puzzle in place, Bell Gardens could work toward a good neighbor policy or ways to enhance and retain businesses and clarify and link provisions under one cohesive and streamlined implementation process. Primary provisions of a proposed ordinance would be in keeping with the general plan and existing codified policies, programs, and procedures. The ordinance general plan consistency or primary provisions would be in keeping with and would promote compatible development, protect the city's mobility, and encourage reliance on private property to meet the needs of businesses and residential property owners alike. Parking concerns abound in the region where most, if not the majority, of areas in the Gateway Cities region are largely built out, and the state has expanded provisions to opt out of minimum required parking in certain areas. So Bell, Commerce, Cudahy, and Downey all have general plan provisions for parking, and then they're implemented in their municipal code, and the administration and enforcement of it occurs in various ways. Some of these ways we would look at to see if they're right and consider alternatives for the city of Bell Gardens. Fiscal impacts would occur in that a new ordinance would have costs associated with it to include administration, implementation, and enforcement. However, many of the ordinances that are already in place account for staff time. And so if provided to look at various ways of cost recovery, your commission could include specific direction to consider meters, for example, as a way to offset costs already associated with staff work to administer and implement and enforce an ordinance, since additional time would be required to, again, transition from business as usual to implementation and administration of a new ordinance for parking. So during this presentation, your commission heard background on recent activity and ordinances related to provisions related to regulating parking, staff preliminary conclusions and alternative solutions. We also looked at answers from surrounding jurisdictions. The options for recommended action today are to deliberate and decide for staff direction to prepare an ordinance, looking at specific ways to conduct research, make findings, and consider feasibility of alternatives, or to receive and file a report with no further actions. And this does conclude my presentation. Are we available for questions?
Thank you. Any questions from the planning commission?
Chair, I would like to add that the preference from the staff would be to give direction to prepare an ordinance. We added the receive and file as a courtesy, but the direction based on all the parking issues that we've had out there is to prepare an ordinance. Thank you.
May I have a motion?
I'd like to raise a motion to direct staff to prepare an ordinance identifying solutions to reduce parking impacts.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I second.
Thank you. Planning Secretary, will you please conduct a roll call vote?
Sure, Commissioner Leon,
Yes.
Commissioner Mendez,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Barcena,
Yes.
and Chairperson De La Rosa.
Yes. All right, now we have discussion item number 7. Staff, will you please present that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Again, Stephen Jones, City Planner, and we have now our EJ element, our environmental justice element update. I will introduce our staff, and we do have a presentation for this as well. So staff recently attended a workshop, and this is just related. This is not directly about the EJ element. I just attended a workshop that helped focus on how the city could best prepare for the infrastructure needs that for our communities based on the region's emissions goals. Southern California has greenhouse gas emission goals and things that would address climate change as well. But the one of the big, for lack of a better word, offenders for air quality is this I-710, main transportation artery for the San Pedro Bay ports, and for many, if not most, of the residents of the Southeast Los Angeles County. The cities of the Gateway Cities Council of Governments have long sought to address the congestion on the I-710 freeway, which contributes to various transportation and environmental challenges. In the subregion, the vast expansion of freight movement from the San Pedro Bay, ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles over the past 30 years, along with mass population growth around the corridor, has placed a strain on the freeway, which was built and designed for freight movement volumes of the 1950s and continues to be one of the areas concerning for air quality and pollution and their health effects. With global trade and commerce on the rise, the ports depend on the stability of the corridor to provide access to warehouses and loading facilities within the subregion and beyond. Population trends would also dictate that transportation alternatives rely on the possible expansion of the corridor. So not only is it an offender, but we need to probably expand it. In 2019, the American Lung Association State of the Air report showed that 141 million people in the United States live in counties with pollution so bad that the air is considered dangerous to breathe. In terms of ozone quality, the same report ranks Los Angeles County as the worst in the country, although, and that was 2019, although poor air quality in Los Angeles affects everyone, many neighborhoods face significantly greater risks to their health due to disproportionate exposure to environmental pollution and health hazards. Again, I cite the I-710. It's a very present danger in our community. It is not just the transportation network that affects us. brownfields from hazardous materials, and at times unmitigated and unfettered industrial, manufacturing, and other impactful uses over the years have exposed many sensitive receptors that live, work, and play nearby to harmful consequences. Those sensitive receptors being children, seniors, and those living with significantly increased sensitivity to exposure to contaminants due to health status. So it is that proportionality that, or excuse me, that disproportionality that is highlighted when health effects take toll or the environment is visibly and notably degraded. As your commission is aware, staff members have been stewarding the use of a local early action planning, which is LEAP grant funded, awarded, given by the California Department of Housing and Community Development to develop an environmental justice element. In August 2022, staff released a request for proposals for expert assistance with the element. And in November of 2022, the council adopted a resolution authorizing Impact Sciences, Inc. to manage the project. Impact Sciences has been a leading woman minority-owned environmental firm based in Los Angeles for over 35 years. City staff partnered with this small business with the mission to improve the daily lives of Bell Gardens residents. With an emphasis in the sectors of mobility, education, and housing, Impact Sciences has demonstrated understanding of the projects on which they provide consultation and work, and they recognize the broad reach and impact on communities. As noted in other meetings, the firm recently won an award for their work on an environmental justice element for the city of Bell, and we're excited to see what they have in store for Bell Gardens, since the preparation comes at a pivotal time when community-based organizations assert the need for environmental review and programs to address exacerbating heat island effects, urban development, asthma, obesity, heat exhaustion, and heat stroke, etc. And the council recently resolved to declare a climate emergency and commit to policies opposing fossil fuel expansion. And so with this pivotal time, we have, again, our environmental justice element being developed, and the firm's lead staff is here to present an update on the element's preparation, provide context for the actions taken, and discuss next steps to put the framework in place to minimize adverse effects of environmental hazards and help create a healthy environment for communities impacted by pollution. So please welcome our Impact Sciences staff online, Margaret Lynn, and then both of us will be available, or all of our staff will be available for questions thereafter. Please begin, Margaret.
Thank you so much, Stephen. If I could have the next slide, please. So as Stephen mentioned, we'll present a little bit about the background and the process that we went through to develop the EJ element. We'll also present the draft goals and policies, and then talk about implementation and next steps. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the EJ element was initiated, as Stephen mentioned, based on a desire by the city leadership to address the adverse effects of environmental hazards and create a healthy community for all residents and stakeholders. The city was awarded a LEAP grant to fund the development of the EJ element. And as Stephen mentioned, Impact Sciences is assisting the city with the development of the element itself. So the EJ element started with research on the existing environmental setting using the California Environmental Protection Agency's CalEnviroScreen tool. The tool looks at 8 population characteristics ranging from asthma to unemployment, and 13 pollution burdens ranging from lead risk in housing to traffic impact. The mapping tool helps identify communities that are most affected by sources of pollution and allocates a percentage score based on each of the indicators. The state has established a disadvantaged communities threshold of 75%. So communities that receive a score of 75% or higher are eligible for prioritization as a disadvantaged community. Based on the CalEnviroScreen scores, the city has an overall average of 95.4%. This means that the city is disproportionately affected by pollution. However, this also means that the city is eligible to receive priority for funding from the California Climate Investments or Greenhouse Gas Reduction Funds. In addition to looking at the physical characteristics of the city, we also reviewed the existing goals and policies that are contained within the city's general plan to identify other issues that are currently being addressed in the existing elements. This will help us identify the goals and policies that can be further supported by the EJ element and also ensure that we're consistent with the other elements of the general plan. With the support of the Los Angeles Neighborhood Initiative, we were also able to develop a community outreach plan to obtain public input on the environmental justice issues that are important to the community. The outreach plan included the distribution of information flyers, a series of public meetings this past summer, and the launch of a community-wide survey. The community survey was open to the public from June to September of last year and received 101 responses regarding the community's input on environmental justice, pollution, and civic engagement. The Cal EnviroScreen data, environmental goals and policies, or existing goals and policies, and community survey data were then used to guide the formation of the draft goals and policies. Next slide, please. Senate Bill 1000 provides guidance on the development of EJ elements. And so SB 1000 specifies that EJ elements should reduce pollution exposure and promote land use compatibility, reduce unique or compounded health risks, promote public facilities, including access to public transit, employment, and services, promote physical activity, promote food access, promote safe and sanitary housing, promote civic and community engagement, and also prioritize the needs of disadvantaged communities. So based on the state requirements, analysis of the existing conditions, and input from the community, 5 general goals were developed to address environmental justice in the city. So the first goal, minimize the community's exposure and impacts from environmental pollution. So the results of the EJ survey indicated that air pollution from vehicles and industrial uses was the leading environmental pollution concern for the community. Goal 1 includes policies that aim to minimize environmental pollution exposures and provide a clean and healthy environment, such as minimizing the location of residences near pollution sources, such as manufacturing facilities, or enhancing tree canopies with public open spaces. The second goal is to improve citywide health by focusing on prevention and intervention. Exposure to existing environmental pollution, lack of recreational facilities, or limited educational programs can have a compounding effect on the health of residents. Therefore, Goal 2 aims to enhance the overall health of residents in the city by providing prevention and intervention strategies, such as streamlining opportunities for grocery stores and farmers markets, and expanding the bicycle network. The third goal, ensure that the existing and future housing stock includes accessible, well-maintained, and affordable housing. The region and state as a whole is going through a housing crisis with a lack of available and affordable housing options. In addition, the community survey indicated that approximately 65% of residents had strong concerns regarding homelessness. Goal 3 builds upon the existing housing element goals and policies and includes policies to improve the quality and quantity of affordable housing, such as implementing an occupancy inspection program to ensure the health and sanitation of existing housing units. The fourth goal, expand and provide new public services to accommodate persons of all ages and socioeconomic levels. Public services include vital services such as police and fire, and public facilities such as parks and libraries. These services and facilities play a critical role in the quality of life of communities. Goal 4 would expand services and ensure equitable access to all by promoting recreational programs to all residents and increasing information regarding available emergency services. Goal 5, enhance public outreach and increase opportunities for civic engagement. Community engagement helps address equity issues by making sure everyone's voice is heard. This will help build trust and empower underrepresented communities. Goal 5 aims to remove barriers and encourage civic engagement through increased outreach effort and other accommodation. Based on the 5 goals, 31 specific policies were created to address environmental justice in the city. Next slide, please. The EJ element is intended to be a living document that evolves as the city continues to grow and adapt. The EJ element is also intended to result in tangible changes in the city and includes an implementation section with 5 initial programs that should be updated on a regular basis to ensure the ever-changing needs of the community are met. The Community Outreach Program serves as a framework for all departments to participate in meaningful two-way communication with the public on all aspects of city governance and delivery of services. The program would ensure future programs and events are made available to all community members. The Land Use Program will provide an opportunity for the city to implement land use and zoning changes to avoid the placement of vulnerable populations near known environmental pollutants or other health risks. The Environmental Monitoring Program will provide the city with an opportunity to monitor and disseminate information regarding air and water quality to residents on an ongoing basis. The Affordable Housing Program would add to the existing housing programs that are outlined in the city's 2021 Housing Element Update, identify the existing and future affordable housing stock, and preserve their affordability. The Health Improvement Program would evaluate potential incentives that would improve the overall health of the city and promote active transportation through the expansion of existing bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. Each of these programs includes subsequent implementation measures that provide specific action items for the city to undertake. To help with the implementation of the EJ element, general timelines, budget estimates, and responsible departments were identified so that the city could incorporate those action items in their annual budget planning process. Next slide, please. Thank you. So following the introduction of the EJ element, the draft documents will be made available on the city website for public review. A public hearing on the element is scheduled for March with the Planning Commission, followed by a city council meeting in April. An initial study and negative declaration was prepared as the environmental review document for the EJ element and will also be made available for a 30-day public review period in March. Public comment on the EJ element and the initial study is greatly encouraged as we value the input from the community and want to make sure that the EJ element is reflective of the community's interests and needs. And that concludes my presentation, and I'll turn it back to Stephen. Thank you.
Thanks, Margaret. Oh, I would just add that we have the benefit of having our Community Development Director, Director Romo here, so I'll be throwing him under the bus because once he determines that the draft element is adequate for public consumption, we want to be able to release that. But we are still working on a few comments for the administrative draft, and in not many days, we'll be releasing that in advance or in preparation for the March commission meeting, where the public will have an opportunity prior to that meeting to review and comment. So many thanks to the city's consultants for their time and for your attention. We're available for questions.
Thank you for the report. Any questions from the commission?
So is my understanding that these goals that have been articulated were more general goals? Is that correct?
Yes, the goals are more general, and then there are specific policies that follow the goals. And then there's the implementation measures that complement the goals that also have specific action measures.
Okay, my follow-up question to that is, maybe I missed this or maybe I misunderstood it, but in relation to goal 1, in the, not sure what this document is called, the goals and policies, it talks about I-710 and the way that it impacts our community. Was there any articulation on how this issue was going to be addressed? I didn't necessarily see, I guess, like any form of action, or again, maybe I missed it.
So there are no specific action items regarding the 710. Stephen, I think that might have been more in relation to your introduction on the presentation that you attended regarding the 710 impacts.
Right. So it wasn't necessarily the environmental justice focus. It was just something that I used to introduce the item. So, yeah. Really, the 710 would be somewhere far beyond our scope in that, you know, it's more of a obviously regional connector, and there are a lot of different things, layers that come into that.
Yeah, I guess I was just wondering the extent of planning staff's ability, if any, to, I guess, kind of put maybe pressure or at least raise this issue beyond the scope of just our city. But I do understand that it's not entirely up to us, just because, like you said, it's a regional connector and there's so many other entities that are involved in it. So yeah, I guess I just wanted to do my due diligence and bring that up.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner Barnes, for saying that, because yeah, that's part of the reason I went to the workshop, was just because there's ways that the city can collaborate with SCAG and with Caltrans and help to transition even our reliance on fossil fuels. And again, the city council just resolved to support, non-proliferation of fossil fuels and things like that, which contribute to the particulate matter that's coming from the 710. So there are things we're doing to collaborate with outside agencies to address that in a different capacity, but in ways that should be meaningful. Again, I cite just transitioning from helping to transition the region into even electrical charging stations and things like that we're looking at helping and collaborating with. So that's part of that workshop's function, was to see how the local and smaller jurisdictions could contribute to the regional goals by taking advantage of some of the funding and things that are out there to help transition.
Thank you for reemphasizing that. I guess it kind of just went over my head, but I appreciate you explaining it again.
And real quick, I should have mentioned that this is just a receive and file report for the update.
Commissioner Mendez have some comments regarding that. First, I thank you for the presentation. I just wish there would be more action orientedness when it comes to those government agencies that monitor. And again, I understand this is within the city scope, but also to try to have more of a active engagement with our government agencies that are nearby, or our infrastructure agencies like Caltrans and Metro, so that, everybody's on the same page. And I hope that can be mentioned with these draft policies, and also in particular to talk about our tap water quality, because I have an understanding that our municipalities, when it comes to these water companies, don't have like an oversight government agency that sees them. There might be some minimum requirements that they have to abide by, but I think it's also important to address that when it comes to environmental justice. Thank you.
Thank you. And just a comment as well, I would love to see more information as to how, regionally, we work to improve environmental justice in this area, particularly because, the city of Commerce is, heavily industrial, and it's also one of the biggest food deserts in Southern California. So, yeah, well, I would love to see more information and, policies and, proposals to see how we can improve, together regionally. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the commission?
Yeah, just on the topic of pollution and just beautification efforts, considering that Florence on the 710 is a major artery here in the gateway cities, any efforts on beautifying that effort? Because if you get off of that off ramp, there's a ton of trash, graffiti. Is there any efforts in maybe, addressing, beautification efforts, and just again, more on, preventing pollution and trash and whatnot?
Mr. Chair, before we move on, could we invite public comment on the discussion item 5 for the public ordinance for impacted community, public rights of way?
Commissioners, can we have a motion in regards to agenda item number 7?
I'd like to raise a motion to that the planning commission receive and file the report of the general plan environmental justice element preparation status.
I second that motion.
Perfect. Planning Secretary, will you please conduct a roll call vote?
Sure. Commissioner Leon,
Yes?
Commissioner Mendez,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Barcena,
Yes.
and Chairperson De La Rosa.
Yes. At this moment, we'll open a public comment for items 6 and 7.
So the members of the public will now have an opportunity to speak on discussion item number 6. Please state your name for the record. Each speaker written comments are limited to 3 minutes. Callers wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by dialing *9 from your phone. When instructed, dial *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining through the Zoom app may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature on Zoom and select the unmute or microphone icon when instructed. We will begin from members of the public that are physically present in the chamber. If you haven't done so already, please submit comment cards. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and see if there's anybody online that would like to speak on this item. And Chairperson, it doesn't look like we have anybody that's wanting to speak on this item.
Thank you very much. All right. We will now begin with item number 1 on the agenda. At this time, I will open public hearing at 5:58 p.m. May we have the staff report, Ms. Mosier?
Chair, before you do that, I just want to note, we identified item number 6, but did we have any comments on item number 7?
All right, Planning Secretary, can we please open public hearing public comments for item number 7?
At this time, members of the public will now have an opportunity to speak on discussion item number 7. Please state your name for the record before addressing your comments to the members of the Planning Commission. Each speaker and written comments are limited to 3 minutes. Callers wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by dialing *9 from your phone. When instructed, dial *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining through the Zoom app may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature on Zoom and select the unmute or microphone icon when instructed. We will begin to hear from members of the public that are physically present in the council chambers. Please submit your comment card if you haven't done so. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and see if there's anybody in the chat line wishing to speak on this item. And Chairperson, it looks like there's no one in the chat line wishing to speak on discussion item number 7.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We will now begin with item number 1 on the agenda. At this time, I will open public hearing at 6 p.m. Can we have the staff report, Ms. Mosier?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good evening, Chair, Commissioners, staff, and public. For the record, my name is Mona Mosayeb, Associate Planner with the Bell Gardens Planning Division. And this presentation is to discuss the conditional use permit and development agreement 2023-072 as it relates to the city and Department of Cannabis Control storefront retail license request at 6231 Eastern Avenue, AKA the subject site. The applicant, Chris Glue, representing Joseph Martin and Mr. Nice Sky Bell Gardens LLC, are requesting, number one, to determine the project categorically exempt based on the common sense and new construction of small structures categories from the provisions of the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to the state CEQA guidelines. Two, adoption of resolution PC 2024-01, approving conditional use permit number 2023-072 to authorize the cannabis retail use and California Department of Cannabis Control to issue a type 10, which is a storefront retailer license at 6231 Eastern Avenue. And third, to recommend that the city council approve an ordinance to enter into and execute a development agreement to establish certain development rights in exchange for public benefits for up to 10 years. The subject site is located within the zone MU, mixed use, with a land use designation of mixed use as well. And mixed use references commercial and residential development. To the immediate north, south, and west of the subject site is also mixed use, with all having commercial uses. And to the immediate east, there are high-density residential uses. No other storefront cannabis retail use exists within a radius of 1,500 feet in radius, nor are there any sensitive uses identified within 600 feet of the subject site. The current conditions. As seen in the images, the upper image is from Eastern Avenue and below is from the alley directly to the west. The current site conditions reflect a vacant structure that was previously used as a restaurant, and it has been unoccupied for over 20 years. Currently, there is no landscaping and the paving is in disrepair. With the depicted site plan, we note that the subject site is located on the west side of Eastern Avenue. The proposed new 2,500 square foot structure is depicted adjacent to the east of the property line on the subject site, with proposed parking in the rear or on the western portion of the site that abuts the alley. 2 drive approaches, the primary being off of Eastern Avenue. There are 15 parking spaces proposed. The secondary entrance is from the alley. The applicant is proposing a contemporary storefront design that would comply with Bell Gardens development standards. The rendering shown here is for illustration purposes only, and the applicant will file for a separate signage permit. The proposed 2,500 square foot structure for the proposed cannabis retail use would include 4 distinct spaces: a secure lobby, a retail space, highlighted in purple, customer restrooms in yellow, and then office and staff areas that contain the office, storage, and vendor areas. Moving into the analysis of the proposed operating standards and conditions of approval. If approved, the CUP would impose conditions of approval that would require the applicant to ensure that the subject site is kept in a neat and orderly manner, that the applicant's facility would feature an on-site security guards 24 hours a day, including an interior guard, day guards, overnight guards, and a security director. The applicant would deploy at least 2 part-time and 2 full-time armed security officers, with at least 1 guard that would be present at the facility 24 hours a day, or at an alternative arrangement that is approved by the Bell Gardens police chief. And all employees are at least 21 years old. And that the patrons of the cannabis retail would be at least 21 years old or 18 years old with a medical recommendation pursuant to state law. And finally, the business hours shall be restricted as follows: Monday through Sunday, 10 a.m. until 10 p.m. unless otherwise conditioned or allowed. The last delivery order would be placed by 9 p.m. and all delivery vehicles returned no later than 10 p.m. The applicant is seeking a development agreement with the city. And the proposed development agreement would permit a cannabis retail use at the subject site for an initial 5-year term, subject to an option to extend the term for an additional 5 years for a total 10-year term. In connection with this, the applicant would provide an annual community benefit in the amount of $100,000 upon the effective date for the development agreement and renewed on an annual basis. The applicant would also be required to pay a quarterly community benefit in the amount that is equivalent to 10% of gross receipt sales on a quarterly basis. Additionally, 80% of all community benefits would be dedicated towards the city's youth and educational programming and for the city's housing programs. Benefits to be utilized for the youth programming, after-school programs, sports programming, personal enrichment classes, or capital improvements on city-owned properties, and housing programming and long-range planning, including but not limited to affordable housing, rent stabilization, and tenant protection efforts, and other planning efforts. The applicant's request is consistent with the City of Bell Gardens general plan. Specifically, land use policy number 3, the project proposes to comply with all the applicable development standards and locational requirements to enhance the economic viability of the surrounding commercial areas. Land use policy 4, private investment in the improvement of a site while ensuring compliance to environmental requirements. And land use policy 5, the introduction of a cannabis retail use would promote an economic diversity of the city's commercial zones and would provide local employment opportunities while still regulating existing businesses. The proposal meets the requirements of section 9.50.050 of the Bell Gardens Municipal Code, basis for approval of a conditional use permit. Since the proposal is consistent with the general plan, zoning, and commercial development standards, the subject site adequately meets the development standards of off-street parking and landscaping. The applicant has provided will-serve letters from all utilities, ensuring those services will be available. And as the subject site is located in the mixed-use zones along the Eastern Avenue corridor, the traffic needs are anticipated to be aligned with the quantity analyzed and presented in the updated 2022 circulation element. The proposal meets the requirements of the Bell Gardens Municipal Code section 9.20.160. The proposal creates a physical environment that is consistent with and complements city goals and vision, protects natural resources from adverse impacts, improves, upgrades, and creates additional community facility and infrastructure, enhance services, and assists in implementing the goal of the general plan, and reduces the economic risk to the surrounding community. The proposed 2,500 square foot structure would provide for conditionally approved cannabis retail sales on site in a building proposed to be consistent with the development standards contained in the Bell Gardens Municipal Code, Chapter 9.2, Commercial Zones. And the development agreement would facilitate the orderly development of the subject site and help ensure certain development rights in exchange for public benefits, including funding for the city's housing and youth and recreational programs for up to 10 years. With this presentation, staff recommends the Planning Commission take the following action. First, determine the project categorically exempt based on the common sense and new construction of small structures categories from the provisions of CEQA. Second, adoption of resolution PC 2024-01, approving conditional use permit number 2023-072 to authorize the cannabis retail use and California Department of Cannabis Control to issue a type 10 license at 6231 Eastern Avenue. And third, recommend the city council approval of an ordinance to enter into and execute a development agreement to establish certain developmental rights in exchange for public benefits for up to 10 years. The applicant is present this evening and would like to share a prepared presentation during the public hearing testimony. Staff, city attorney, and applicant are open to questions. Thank you.
Thank you for the staff report, Ms. Musayeb. Any comments or questions from the commission?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Um, This is for our staff. Why wasn't there any comparison or study done to assess our neighbors, our local jurisdictions about basically doing the same thing about proving, this type of business, revenue study. I know we have one in our backyard, it's Maywood, so I mean, we got a breakdown of parking jurisdictions and how they work in other cities, but why wasn't there one done for this type of study and this type of business?
Paloma McAvoy for the City Attorney's Office. I can answer that question for you, Planning Commissioner. When the ordinance was considered last year by the Planning Commission and the City Council, we did provide those statistics at that time, and it did also provide some possible scenarios in terms of what kinds of revenues could be raised. So we did have a somewhat in-depth conversation about that last year. However, just to refresh everybody's memory around the dais, just to give you kind of a picture of what goes on in the area immediately surrounding the city limits of Bell Gardens. In Commerce, retail sales are prohibited. In Maywood, they are no longer issuing new licenses, but they are renewing current licenses. In Cudahy, they recently passed a ballot measure in that city. They require a 15% tax rate. In Bell, Southgate, Downey, Pico Rivera, and in Santa Fe Springs, retail sales and cannabis activities are prohibited. And in Linwood, there is a 5 to 6% tax rate. So sort of across the board, probably with more jurisdictions prohibiting cannabis as opposed to allowing it. So kind of allows the city of Bell Gardens to sort of be a front runner and determine, how open up the marketplace here and to take in those dollars. So I apologize. I was not here in person for the last presentation, but we did talk about it at length when we considered the ordinance. And if I may also add, at the time, there was some discussion about whether or not to proceed with putting a tax on the ballot or going with the development agreements. And at the time, there was the desire was to move forward with the development agreements.
Okay, thank you, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. I do have a question. How does our development agreement compare to our neighbors who have implemented such model? And what are the key differences?
Sure, no problem. So as I mentioned, actually, now as I'm looking at my notes, none of the surrounding cities that I just mentioned use development agreements. They use taxes. And those taxes might range anywhere between, as I mentioned earlier, between 6 and 15%. So 10% is sort of in the middle.
It's more of a general question. Why would the city of Cudahy propose a higher percentage in terms of tax?
I was not present during those conversations. I'm sure perhaps they saw an opportunity as one of the few cities within the Sela region to impose that type of tax. I can't forecast what was in those decision makers' minds at that time. I do believe there were two competing tax measures though, and I think this is the one that the residents ended up choosing. But that's all sort of hearsay at this point.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I just, if there can be maybe a quick summary or breakdown, and so we can let the public know about the differences between retail, distribution, manufacturing, and cultivation. So maybe we can address some of their concerns.
So I can answer that question as well, Planning Commissioner. So when the ordinance was considered last year, the planning division did bring a report, an informational report to the city council that outlined all of the different activities that are permissible under current state law. As you mentioned, cultivation, distribution, manufacturing, laboratory testing, as well as retail sales. At the time, it was the appetite to move forward with retail sales. I don't want to guess what might have been in the minds of those decision makers at the time. But I will say that the ordinance currently prohibits all of the aforementioned activities with the exception of retail sales. At times, sometimes decision makers decide that that might be the way they want to go because there are more opportunities for revenue. And sometimes cities do find them a little bit easier to regulate because they are out in the open as opposed to hiding behind warehouses where it can be a little bit more difficult to regulate what actually happens behind those closed off walls. And just a little bit easier to kind of see what's happening with those particular operations. But the ordinance strictly prohibits those other activities. And if any of these applications, as they're being processed and brought to the Planning Commission, as with this application that you're looking at right now, there are conditions of approval that strictly prohibit those activities. Engaging in those types of activities do subject that particular operator to potentially losing their CUP or the rights under the development agreement.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions or comments?
I have a few more. Yeah, sorry. As far as the security, I know there's mentioned as interior, day, overnight guards. Is that just one person that's going to be labeled as such, or there's going to be actual person, like individual, like separate? Because sometimes, businesses, they like to just combine it as one person, but I just want to see if there's, clearance on that.
And to add to that question, would that person be inside the building or how should I say it, or outside the lot per se?
So staff is looking for the particular answers that you've posed, but I will mention that those materials, the security plan that's been submitted by the applicant, it is contained in your Planning Commission materials as one of the exhibits.
We also have the applicant here that could answer that question once it's their time to speak.
Certainly. I just wanted to read what was presented in the presentation. Our understanding of the security plan is that there would be 24-hour security. There would be an overnight guard. There would be 2 during operating hours, but there will be 24-hour monitoring of the site. And there will be also a security director, but I will allow the applicant to get into greater detail if you would like.
Yes, thank you.
And the security plan is also Exhibit 13.
And another question, as far as just what city department is going to be in charge of regulating and monitoring, and I know there's a mention in it, but just specifically, are there random inspections? How will that take place?
That's a good question. So there are provisions both in the CUP and in the development agreement that do permit city staff to enter onto the premises to ensure compliance with the approvals. Non-compliance with the approvals could result in sort of enforcement or compliance action, including revocation of the CUP if that is something that would be suggested by staff.
And that would be the Community Development Department and our Code Enforcement Division and our Planning Division that would be doing the enforcement.
And I have one last question. I know it's another item with the same situation here, but how close in proximity are those exactly? Or can I ask that question now?
Well, if you're referring to this one and the other one on the agenda, they are more than 500 feet, which is the minimum that two cannabis uses can be next to each other.
Thank you. And last question. Let's just say for whatever reason, you know, this business decides to close down, bankruptcy and whatnot. Can another entity or business claim that's like, what's that process look like for them to, is it easy for them to get that license that's already bestowed upon that entity? How would that work? Would they have to reapply or how's that?
There are several different approvals that are associated with any cannabis retail use. I can speak specifically to Bell Gardens. You know, there are state approvals that are required, including licenses from the Department of Cannabis Control. However, at a local level, this ordinance and the way this works is that development agreement rights and CUP rights, those all we call it run with the land. They don't necessarily attach to a particular person. They attach to the property on which the use is permitted. However, there is language in both the CUP and the DA that would require the city to take a look at whoever was going to be coming in and stepping into the shoes of the current operator. The ordinance also requires that an operator obtain a business regulatory permit. That is a little different than the CUP and the DA. Those actually attach to the person or the business. And so that person would also be required to obtain a business regulatory permit pursuant to your municipal code as well. In addition, there would be a number of clearances and approvals and licenses that an operator would need to get at the state level from the Department of Cannabis Control, Franchise Tax Board, and so on and so forth.
Okay, thank you so much. And I know I keep saying my last question, but as far as that initial annual fee of $100,000, is that a recurring? So every year they have to pay that?
Yes, it is.
I do have a question for staff. So over the course of last week, I received a comment from a community member. This person lives right across from the alleyway which separates Specht Avenue and Eastern. So there are a couple of houses of worship which are located within 500 feet of this area, the proposed site. Staff, is there any details in regards to sensitive uses and you know, see if that's that could be an implication?
I'm Mona Masayeb, Associate Planner. As shared this afternoon with the commissioners in a memo, houses of worship are not deemed sensitive uses. Sensitive uses are specifically daycare, school, youth facilities, and parks. The activity of the sensitive use must be the primary use. So a house of worship does not fall under those categories.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions or comments before we open public comment?
Just wondering if, for clarification purposes, we will allow community input, and then after, would you allow for further discussion with commissioners before we make motion? Just want to get a clarification on that.
Yes, commissioners, I want to make sure that you understand, you can ask as many questions as you want. That's what this hearing is for. The community will have an ability as part of the public hearing to comment on this, yes. And typically, 3 minutes are provided for the city council, and I believe for the planning commission as well. So, and we do this, so there would be a lot of repetitive comments. But again, the public will have the opportunity to comment, yes, and ask questions.
In that case, I'll save my comments and my questions after. And I think there's also going to be a moment where the applicant will be speaking as well. So, yeah. Thank you.
All right, we will now open public comments for this item. Secretary, will you please announce the instructions for public participation?
Sure, the members of the public will now have an opportunity to speak on public hearing item number 1. Please state your name for the record before addressing your comments to the members of the Planning Commission. Each speaker written comments are limited to 3 minutes. Callers wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by dialing *9 from your phone. When instructed, dial *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining through the Zoom app may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature on Zoom and select the unmute or microphone icon when instructed. We will begin to hear from members of the public that are physically present in the council chambers. If you haven't done so already, please submit your comment cards now. And please note, we do know the applicant is here available, and he can go ahead and provide any comments as well.
First.
Good evening. Planning Commission. I feel like I know, well, I should say I've seen most of you. I've been attending the Planning Commission meetings for the last year virtually in regards to this very polarizing topic. A couple of things on the presentation that were not factual. I happen to live right next to the proposed site, my family and I, 6219 Eastern Avenue. If you go back to the slide, you'll see my home there, right next to it, north of that. On there, it said it was just commercial. It's commercial residential. Another thing too is that place has now been vacant for the last 20 years. There's actually a family that works there. They run produce out of that site every day. Been doing it for probably 15, possibly 20 years. So I'm up here now just because obviously this affects my family and myself. We've lived at this site for over 40 years. Understand it's mixed use. It's quite unique. But the concern are just twofold. First and foremost is safety. This is a new thing with the city of Bell Gardens. It's never been done before. The fact of hearing guards, 24 hours a day right next door to the window where my nephew sleeps, it's something that is quite concerning. Not only that, but in that area there's a lot of we have issues with homelessness and transients that walk to and from. They usually reside at the East Watch shopping center. They loiter there. Some of them reside there. They're there currently now. This morning when I went to work. So my concern is, or our concern is, they're going to start to congregate over to the site, and then it's going to become a nuisance issue where we have to contact PD once again. And I mean, I've been doing that since 2020. That's when it really just climaxed. Not every day, but occasionally. So even though I understand this is something that the council members approved, again, very polarizing. I saw the meetings online. I'm here to just ask the commission to look elsewhere, somewhere where it's not next to a house, right next to, I mean, I literally, there's just a fence and there we are, family. And because in the meetings, I remember them, the city attorney saying there really is no limit on these as long as there's applicants. So places of worship, I was going to bring that up as well, but I understand that's something that is not viable at this time. It's just schools and childcare, parks. But I'm just asking the Planning Commission to, because you have the power to deny this and just look elsewhere where it's not affecting, again, lifelong Bell Gardens residents here, so thank you for your time.
Do we have anybody else wishing to speak on this item? If so, if you could just please submit your comment card now.
Buenas tardes.
Good evening. My name is Reina Rivera. I've lived here in Bell Gardens for 30 years, and I have fought for 18 years, street to street, house to house, to educate people to prevent drug use. And it seems unfair to me that you all are coming in to put those businesses here. This does not benefit young people, our children. Because of drugs, I have suffered and had to hide from shootings twice. And no, it seems very wrong for you to bring that cancer here. We all have children. I don't know about you. And we can't. We all need to fight to say no to drugs. You don't have it close to your houses, but you're bringing it here to us. We're close to schools. Our youth need something to help them. Programs that help them in school. It seems very sad that you're just bringing trash here. I just would like you to reflect. Think about your children. Do you think you don't want them to use those drugs? Please. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else wishing to speak on this item? If not, we can go ahead and have the applicant come to the podium.
¿Hay alguien más en el público quien quiera hacer un comentario acerca de este tema? No.
Anybody, the applicant?
Right. Could we have the applicant come to the front?
Good evening, commissioners and staff. My name is Christopher Glue. It's my pleasure to present to you this evening on behalf of Mr. Nice Guy Retail. I do need a little assistance with that side. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Sorry, I was first time using this device. I apologize. Well, staff did an excellent job in presenting our project. I just have a quick supplemental. While I'm up here waiting, kill a little bit of time, I did write down your questions that you asked, and I'd be happy to provide some follow-up on that either before the presentation or after. I can tell you when it comes to security, the idea is that we would provide the 2 guards during the day. That's mainly to focus on the interior, exterior as well, patrolling. At night, it's exclusively the exterior. I mean, we have alarms and stuff for the inside of the facility. One of the gentlemen, or the gentleman that spoke, talked about the issue of homelessness. I'll share a story with you while I'm waiting to do my presentation, if you'll allow me. We are just opened up in the city of Costa Mesa, which actually has a real serious homeless problem. And one of the issues that we were presented with is the homeless encampments that were currently occupying a lot of the properties. Most of the neighbors and residential complaints came in the form of, well, how is this going to affect the homeless issue? So what we decided to do was partner with the community and develop like a neighborhood watch. So one of the issues is during the day, the businesses and residents were able to kind of deter some of the homeless issues. But at night, they would just kind of nest in and find the dark spots, and they would be able to kind of infiltrate in that capacity. And so we started to do our security guard doing a block watch. So they would walk the block at night, help with identifying situations where homeless were an issue, calling in those incidents. And we worked with Costa Mesa Police Department. And since we've opened at 2 of the locations, we've had nothing but rave reviews about, decreasing that issue. So we do look to collaborate with the community. That is our focus. So speaking to that security and the homelessness issue, that's the direction on that. Oh, perfect. Still, is it this button or? That'll pop it over. Okay. Oh, okay, I'll just wait. Oh, also on the community benefit, so I'm not wasting anyone's time. You mentioned that, and we operate all over the state in California and in Oregon. And I will tell you that the rates that are in your development agreement are the most aggressive we've ever seen. I know there is another community here that has 15%, but the average for us is around 6 to 7%. So just to give you some perspective, that's what we typically experience. And no $100,000 at the beginning of the year either. So, I mean, I think that your development agreement based on our experience is very aggressive in that regard. Okay, thank you. I won't delay any longer. So we actually have some of our key staff members here, as well as our architect and our director of operations, who actually launched our entire Oregon platform. So they'll be available for questions as well at the end of the presentation.
Can we start the timer, please?
So this is just a 3-minute presentation? Okay, that's fine. Then I will just kind of skip through this real quick. It's a bit longer. We're used to having a full amount of time to deal with these issues. So we are a multi-state operator. We have 28 licensed cannabis retail locations with 7 licensed shops in the state of California. We're a fully integrated operator. We cover growing operations, manufacturing, distribution facilities, and of course, the retail component of the cannabis sector. We employ almost 400 people throughout all aspects of the industry with an emphasis on local hiring practices. I'll skip over. The leadership team is made up of some of the most experienced professionals from our talent pool. Mr. Martin is an experienced owner-operator in the cannabis industry. He was the leader of our company, rollout in Santa Ana, Moreno Valley, Lake Elsinore, Palm Springs, and Costa Mesa. Ty Riley, who's also here this evening, is the operations director that managed over 20 locations in the state of Oregon before moving to California to help with this project. Let's see. One of the things we as a company are proud of is that the chance to improve communities that we move into. It is typically the case that we take on revitalization projects. Here we have a slide depicting the current state of the property. Current location, as you heard, has been vacant for over 20 years. As you know, it's in need of some attention. Our team is excited to be building a modernized structure that will help revitalize the commercial corridor and be a location the city of Bell Gardens can be proud of. Here you can see the elegant design of the proposed exterior, modern finishes, smooth, soft white surfaces, and simple signage under separate permit. The building is situated toward the front of the right-of-way, compatible with adjacent properties and away from residential. A new landscape palette will soften the built environment with the introduction of California native drought-tolerant species. The exterior provides ample parking, exceeding the required 7 spaces. The interior is a simple, clean design seeking to guide the customer journey with safety and security always as a priority. The front of the house pictured here is accessible to 21 and over with valid ID. Those that have ordered online or know what they want can pick up and exit quickly. First-time customers and those that seek to discuss options with our knowledgeable subject matter experts are welcome to engage with staff. The back of the house is a secure access area with controlled door access. You must be employed to enter with credentials or signed in as a visitor to access. Since I only have about 20 seconds left, Mr. Nice Guy believes in a community-first approach to running a successful business. The first step in this process is engagement. We look forward to meeting our neighbors and working proactively with them on collaborative solutions to the issues that they've presented. Every time we open, I will respect the timer. I'm still available for any questions as well as members here.
Sir, if you'd like, if you have another member of your team, they also have 3 minutes. They can continue your presentation.
Oh, all right. We're on slide 7. This button. Yeah.
Start. Thank you, Jim Fitzpatrick, former chair of the Planning Commission in Costa Mesa, Mr. Nice Guy team. So we do, in fact, we intended to do outreach. We were advised not to do that prior to this meeting. We mail to that local community, invite them, have some local food. We do it in both English and Spanish. That way we get a chance to talk to our neighbors, give them a chance to get to know us. the layered onion approach is what we had to do is we had to come to public meetings. We wanted to get everybody comfortable with how safe and secure this is going to be without telling any bad guys exactly how to beat our system, right? So we came up with a layered onion where you harden that outer layer perimeter and then build a series of challenges to move into the facility with the intent to slow folks down. So our priority is people, cannabis, and cash. On the outside, we have the hardened asset, we have security lights. As you move through, you are validated for age, you're free to move about the facility. And then once you get back into the back of the house, there's all sorts of secure access. You either needs to be an employee, badged employee, or escorted by an employee. We really, although it's such an aggressive development agreement, as Chris shared, we do look for ways to get involved in the community, and we're trying to figure that out right now. So we're very available if anyone has any suggestions about how best to get involved in the community. We're really excited to see such a large portion goes to education outreach. We too want to keep cannabis away from the youth. Our intent is to locally hire. It's the best thing to do. That means we can get folks walking and biking. Once we find one employee, we have kind of a birds of a feather approach where we're trying to encourage them to introduce their friends. They know the community, they can help us with the community. It's the best way to go. In one city, we had a location that may have presented some traffic management issues. So we went and we got certified, and now we have that in-house and we deploy that in each and every one of our operations. So in the beginning, as customers are coming in and the traffic patterns are kind of new, we have somebody there. If there are expected peak periods and things, we would have somebody actually in the parking lot, making sure that people were getting in and out and doing so quiet and safely. We have an ability to communicate with the customers both verbally. We have signs inside the facility. We have signs on the outside of the facility. If there are any particular incidents, we have the ability to introduce a communication directly into the exit bags to address anything that may come up. Perimeter lighting, staff really went overboard to show you everything. I mean, remember, this is one of the most regulated businesses you'll ever see. So we need a safe environment on the exterior, so both our security guard as well as PD driving by can see, but we want to respect the quiet enjoyment of the neighborhood. So you can see that all along the perimeter are zeros. There's sufficient light on site to provide security, but allow for quiet enjoyment. Thank you.
Does the applicant have anybody else that would like to speak on this item?
I guess this is actually the last slide. So thank you very much. We appreciate presenting for you. If you have any questions, we'll be here to answer them for you. Thank you.
Chairperson, if I may, I would like to see if there's anybody in the chat line that would like to speak on this item.
Please, thank you.
If there's anybody in the chat line that would like to speak on this item, you can go ahead and dial *6 to unmute yourself. And please note there will be 3 minutes to speak on your comment.
Thank you. If there are no additional questions by the Planning Commission, we'll close public hearing at 6:47. No objections.
You said that's for public comments, but it's open for discussion within commissioners, if that's allowed.
Correct. Yeah, so we would close.
Okay, thank you very much, applicants, for coming in and doing that brief presentation. I don't understand why there's that echo, but I'll try to speak loud if I need to. If the applicant may share their examples of community involvement in other cities? And the feedback that you would get from community members? Yes, please. I hope so. Yeah.
And again, do I have 3 minutes or can I just respond freely? Okay.
You can respond freely. This
Thanks.
is
I
now
just want to make sure I'm
deliberation.
respectful of your time.
Yes.
I'll start with Santa Ana. That's where we were first founded. So in the city of Santa Ana, we actually do a toy drive every year. We've actually tried to engage with the city a little more proactively. The only problem is that a lot of times some charities won't take our donations or are a little reluctant to work with us. So actually one of the city staff there, and I'll name her because she's been so instrumental in helping us with this task. Her name's Yvette Portugal. She heads up the cannabis and the code enforcement in that department. She'd also be happy to answer any questions for you. She's very public with the information. And one of the things she was able to get us the ability to do was the toy drive each year. That's changed to backpacks for kids, bikes for kids. It's morphed into lots of different programs where we've donated to local youth charities. We didn't pick that. That was selected by the city. We were open to any and all ideas. Another thing that we did with the city of Santa Ana was we worked to do local hiring through job fairs and work with their jobs for job transition program for adults. So we've done both those things. It's been successful. We'd like it to be more robust because honestly, we want to participate. We added one thing into the development agreement here. We asked to provide additional hours to do service in the community where we would do paid time off for our employees to work with local charities. That's something we've implemented in other cities. That goes over great. We did hours and hours of work at soup kitchens and other charitable organizations in that city. Costa Mesa, we started off with a local jiu-jitsu school that actually was sponsoring kids that didn't have money to do tournaments, adults that didn't have money to train, people who are in sober living that wanted to have physical activity but couldn't afford to utilize the gym services. So we gave them a stipend each month to provide for those opportunities. And they actually came to speak at a few of our public hearings. So I think they're pretty happy with how that program's been going. That's just a few examples. I don't want to take up too much time. If you want me to keep going, I'd be happy to.
No, thank you. My next question is beautification measures. How will that look like in terms of creating more community involvement when it comes to the area?
So beautification, I mean, that goes from everything from the landscape design where we actually use California drought tolerant species, just trying to stay in that same genre. When it comes to how is it going to create community engagement, we have a wrought iron fence in the back. We actually propose closing that off to help with the residential impact. So the only time that traffic flow would come through there is if we needed to do trash pickup or anything like that. We hope to improve the commercial corridor by beautifying that project and hopefully uplifting the neighbors and, you know, trying to set a nice gold standard for the community.
Thank you. When it comes to security, is that staff directly underneath the company, or is that like a third party?
It's a third party we've worked with for a very long time. The reason why we selected the company is the owner is an Iraq veteran and he actually employs only former military. And so it's kind of like a way to help out with people that were in the military and provide a job outlet for them. So it's a third party service. It's called Prior Service Security.
And they would have to work collaboratively with our police department when it comes to security, right?
Correct.
In the area. Okay.
That partnership actually helps both of us.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
And I would like to note, just from that note, we've actually operated in Oregon and California for, you know, almost 8 years now. We've never had a major security incident at any location. Not one attempt.
No major security whatsoever. Okay. Thank you for that. The next question is, when it comes to the local staffing at the site, what percentage of that will be for our community members that can apply and qualify?
So we'd like to have 100% local hire rates. That's our goal in every city we're in. The only problem is in some cities, we just don't get applicants from the local community. So we're always trying to work with the city. In Santa Ana, they actually started to direct us to people inside the staff that could help us with coordinating efforts to get local hires. I mean, we can host job fairs. That's something that lot would actually allow us to do. And if there is a contact within your city to help us with, ideas on how to achieve local hire, we'd be happy to work and collaborate with them. The reason why that works well for us is it helps with understanding the community we're in, building those relationships, also provides a benefit to the community by providing jobs. And we are a big proponent of bikeability and walkability. So if we can have, employees that could potentially reduce the impact on the environment by being able to walk or bike to work, that's a benefit to all of us.
Thank you. My last question is, when it comes to capital, I have an understanding that when it comes to establishments or companies such as this, it does require a lot of out-of-pocket costs, right? And sometimes they do the process of applying with the city, and there's a lot of behind the scenes that many are not in the know. And because of such thing, there's always fees associated left and right for the company. Do you guys have enough capital, and do you guys foresee out-of-pocket costs that could hinder your application with City of Bell Gardens?
That's a great question, actually. It's an issue that we've raised in a lot of our applications. We go into cities all the time where we see people that are selected and they never are able to open their stores. So proof of capitalization is important, and we're a self-funded enterprise. We don't take any investment money. We're not publicly traded. We don't rely on any outside investors. All of our projects, we actually are buying the property. So we're going to be the landlord and the operator. And so we have an interest in developing it and keeping it long-term and being a partner with the community. We're very well capitalized. We don't take on any projects that we can't open. It's not in our best interest to do that. We actually can provide all of our proofs of financials. This city does present a unique challenge. It's something I raised with the city attorney in our negotiations. Asking for the $100,000 up front before we've even broke ground on a major project where we're doing a lot of construction is a hurdle. We can achieve that. It's something we were able to do. We did ask to have that deferred until we were able to start construction and later on for obvious reasons, but we were able to fully capitalize the project without any issue.
I thank you so much, sir, for your time and for this information. Thank you.
Anytime, no problem. You want me to stay up for a minute or?
Yes, any commissioners, any other questions?
I have a question, but it's not directly to Mr. Nice Guys Incorporation. But how many do we plan as a city to allow permits and whatnot?
There is, Commissioner, there is no cap. What there is a distance requirement. So the applications that come in, they have to meet that distance requirement of 500 feet between uses, between dispensaries. Also, they have to meet the criteria of the sensitive uses, the 600 feet from schools, et cetera. So the other thing, of course, is whether they're leasing or buying. At this point, we don't see maybe perhaps more than 5 or 6 coming in. Right now we have applications for 6, but we have some that are moving forward, others that are taking their time deciding.
I will share with you on that, just that I can tell you from personal experience, it's very hard to find properties that fit the map in your city. So it was a very difficult task.
Thank you.
And I'll add on, Commissioner, when the ordinance was brought to the Planning Commission and the City Council, we did share a map in that presentation. In addition to the criteria that Mr. Romo discussed, there's also 2 prohibited areas, one of them being the Civic Center overlay, which includes City Hall, St. Gertrude's Church, the U.S. Postal Office, this general vicinity, as well as the vicinity that incorporates the bicycle casino. And as Mr. Romo mentioned, commercial and industrial zones only. So just mainly primarily the main corridors, commercial corridors, industrial corridors of the city meet that criteria. And as has already been suggested, every time a application or an applicant is approved, that automatically creates a 500-foot buffer within that particular location. And part of that thought was to try to stifle any kind of proliferation of cannabis uses in any particular area. So sort of a process of natural selection. There is not a magic number. It sort of depends on how these applications come in and your bodies decide whether or not to move forward with the projects as proposed.
Okay, thank you so much.
Right. I do have a question for the applicant. So you might be aware, there's another applicant right around the corner of Eastern and Engage. Although it's shot, relatively close to the 500-foot radius. How do you, as like being a competitor, potentially a competitor, for this other, retailer, how do you see that, impacting your business? How do you see that affecting, your operations in the city?
Well, I would encourage you to understand that we do work with our neighbors to try and be successful in each area that we operate. And as a matter of fact, they actually are our neighbor currently in the city of Costa Mesa, and we're about 1,000 feet away. So we're operating together in that city. So it's been no problem so far.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Commissioners, any other questions?
Yeah, good question. I know it's pretty unique with our city and having these two items are presented and potentially having these two businesses do business in our neighborhood. But, are we unique to surrounding areas that we have, two retail businesses right next to each other? Is it?
So, if that question is directed to me, oh, thank you. In Lake Elsinore,
Yeah.
we can walk from our shop, one of our shops, to the next property. It's like 50 feet away. It's not uncommon. In Oregon, we have them compressed all around each other. I mean, sometimes they share the same plaza and their suites are adjacent to each other. The city of Costa Mesa, there is no buffer between shops. So that is something that we have. We have actually almost 4 in a row right on Newport Boulevard. So, it's fairly unique now. It's leaning more. It used to be the trend that there was buffers between shops. Now cities seem to be going more away from that and starting to just say, hey, if you meet the zoning, then you're in. And they haven't added a buffer between shops.
Okay, thank you so much for clarification.
Commissioners, any final questions, comments?
Yes, I would like to continue with further questions. If we may revisit or explore the tax imposed on the company here of 10% of gross receipts instead of 15%, and instead of 10 years worth of community involvement, make it 15 years. Would the company be willing to do that if we were to revisit or explore those conditions?
If I could interrupt, Commissioner Mendez, are you proposing to extend the development agreement to 15 years?
Yes.
That's prohibited. The development agreement procedures that were approved by the council only allow a maximum of a 10-year agreement.
Okay, but as the planning commission, can we go ahead and explore and revisit that if permissible?
That direction would need to come from the city council. Unfortunately, I'm sorry.
Then I guess no need to answer that question. Thank you.
And, final comment here, to the people, in attendance online, to, our residents here in the community attending. Obviously, like the gentleman mentioned, this is polarizing, very, sensitive topic to the community, wherever you sit on this, on this topic. I just want to just remind everyone that this is something that was at the direction of our city council, right? People that you elect to be here to represent you all, to look at the best interests of the community. I'm sure a lot of us here on the planning commission, we, promote the idea of bringing businesses to our community, right? That's going to help, obviously beautify, bring investment, and of course, help our programs, specifically looking into youth, recreation, housing. I think I'd like to see more language in regards to homelessness. That's obviously one of the topics that we mentioned, be added into here. But again, this is something that, again, people that are watching, residents, again, this is something at the direction of our council members, people that are appointed is here. And, you know, to take it up to, you know, our city leadership, especially if you have concerns, considering that this is not a permanent, you know, agreement. This is, I believe it's 5 years and an option to do another 5 years. So yeah, it is very hard. I understand for the folks that I brought their, you know, especially, you know, our neighborhood watch, about their concerns on fighting, you know, substance usage and affecting our youth. But obviously when it comes to, you know, cannabis, marijuana, you know, things are changing. You know, we're seeing even our president talking about the idea about taking it off as a Schedule I drug. You know, the municipal, you know, benefits that it has to health and whatnot. But again, this is not a permanent decision. It's something that we can always revisit, especially if you know, we don't see that things are working as it's supposed to. So I just want to end my comment there. You know, as a recently appointed commissioner, I just came back. You know, I wish I had seen more of a revenue breakdown. I understand that was presented before, to kind of get an idea about, you know, how other cities, I understand we, you know, just like the gentleman mentioned that, you know, our DA, our development agreement is, you know, not typical standard, but I wish I had seen some idea about what our projections would look like. Yeah, that's pretty much my comment. Thank you.
Chairperson, if I may, it looks like we have a speaker online that would like to speak. I know you guys closed the public hearing, so it'd be at your discretion if you'd like to reopen the public hearing to allow that caller to speak.
All right. Thank you, Secretary. We'll open up the public hearing.
So if there's any callers in the chat line that would like to speak, you can go ahead and press *6 to unmute yourself. Hello, can you hear us? It looks like they logged off. Oh, we have another caller. Hello, Ms. Sanchez?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
My name is Norma Sanchez. I'm actually attending this for an assignment for grad school. But it's interesting because I never attend the meetings within my own city. I understand some people are just not, I don't know if the other callers are not fully listening in, but I think it's a really good proposal as far as like investment, and I would like to see how they help on, or like the money that they're trying to give to the city would actually help for affordable housing, since a lot of people are against rent being raised in the city. Yeah, so investment would be good for our city because I don't see anybody else bringing in money to help us right now. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Do we have anybody else in the chat line that would like to speak on this item? If so, please press *6 to unmute yourself. Okay, it doesn't look like we have anybody else in the chat line, Chairperson.
Chairperson, can I ask a quick question?
Yes, of course.
I noticed other cities like City of Montebello, they have only online sales. Is that something that we maybe visited as well, or maybe looked into versus just like going directly to the store? Or does I don't know if they can come back and ask that. answer my question too. Is just, is that something that you guys do as well, online sales versus having just, coming directly to the store? Yeah, if you can.
Yeah,
Or
we can conduct, I'm not aware of any city that actually has like an online only because, that with online orders, there's a lot of credit card transactions. And unfortunately, unless our president decides to take some action with Schedule 1, that would open up the merchant services for the cannabis businesses. You can operate a delivery model, but it's a little bit more challenging just because of that merchant services issue right now. Hopefully with the liberalization of the scheduling, that can go away and you could offer more services like that. However, we do offer an online platform where people can place their order and come in and pick it up, as well as have delivery.
All right, thank you. Yeah, just because I do, work in the city of Montebello. I understand they don't necessarily have retail shops. They do have online placement orders and of course warehouse and distribution. But I just wanted to see if we explored that, maybe here as well.
I believe that delivery is an option throughout the state of California. I don't think any city is authorized to completely ban it. They can tax it and, but they have to allow it to transpire as long as it's conducted legally under the Department of Cannabis regulations.
Okay, sir. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, if there are no objections by the planning commission, I will now close public participation at 7:09.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I didn't catch you in time, but I just wanted to say something really quick. I want to implore the members of the public that are here or on the phone lines to share your opinion with us because while we can give our suggestions to the city council, ultimately we need your input to make this decision. We want to make it with your insights and your opinions in mind, but we can't do that unless we hear what you have to say. So express your views, express your opinions, express your concerns, or the opposite, if you think this is a good idea, share that. But you do need to share it so that we can make an informed decision for you guys.
Thank you. All right. If there are no additional questions by the planning commission, I will close public hearing at 7:10.
Okay, so with respect to the vote before the commission, we have a determination of the conditional use permit in compliance with CEQA. This is agenda item 1 for public hearing 1. We have number 2, the adoption of the resolution approving the conditional use permit, and number 3, adoption of the resolution recommending the development agreement. We'll start with the resolution. The commission has the option to adopt the resolution approving the conditional use permit. The commission can adopt the resolution approving the CUP with additional conditions, or the commission can instruct staff to return with the resolution with findings for denial of the CUP. We would need findings that support that denial. So we will vote on that.
Can you just repeat that once more, just for clarity's sake? Thank you.
Sure. So the commission has choices. The commission can adopt this resolution approving the conditional use permit. The commission can adopt the resolution approving the conditional use permit with additional conditions, or the planning commission can instruct staff to return with a resolution with findings for denial of the conditional use permit. However, we would need those exact findings as to why that denial has been maintained.
And Mr. City Attorney, if the Planning Commission does move to approve the project, the CUP and make the recommendation to council to approve the DA, they would also need to make the determination for the categorical exemptions first as well.
Thank you, Ms. McAvoy.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion?
just correct me if I do this in the incorrect form, but I'd like to raise a motion to deny this, the CUP for the developmental agreement number 2023-7-2. With the reasons being that, or do I give my reasons now, or is that, how does this work? I'm not entirely sure.
You would need to instruct staff to come back with a resolution that with findings that to deny the conditional use permit. So as Mr. De Leon had mentioned, we would need to know exactly what findings you want staff to make, because the resolution before you and staff's recommendation is to approve the project. The findings would be opposite of what you're suggesting right now.
I don't know if I can have some more clarification on what, like, I guess am I limited to what findings? Because like, I guess I have a reason, but I don't know if it's a permissible reason.
So the required findings in order to approve a CUP, I'll list them out loud. The conditional use is consistent with the general plan for the area and complies with standards in Bell Gardens Municipal Code Title IX. There is no anticipation that the conditional use would jeopardize, adversely affect, endanger, or otherwise constitute a nuisance to the public health, safety, or general welfare. The subject site for the proposed conditional use is adequate in size, shape, topography to accommodate the yards, walls, fences, parking, and loading facilities, landscaping, and other development features as prescribed in Bell Gardens Municipal Code Title IX as required by the Planning Commission as a condition of approval. And the subject site is for the proposed conditional use is served by highways or streets adequate in width and improved as necessary to carry the kind and quantity of traffic such use would generate. And that the subject site is served by the required utilities, including electricity and water supply of quantities and pressures required by the fire code to provide adequate protection.
So yeah, I guess I just don't know how to proceed with this. Do I have to specifically say one of the findings that you mentioned, or?
Yes, so in order to approve a CUP, your municipal code provides these 5 findings that I just mentioned that are required in order to approve it. In order, though, to disapprove it, you would have to say that one of those 5 findings that were just read, and they're also in the resolution and the materials that were distributed to you, that the Planning Commission cannot make one of those findings. However, as I mentioned, staff has provided you a resolution that does make those findings. If you want to instruct staff to come back with a resolution to the opposite, we would need some instruction and some direction as how you want staff to proceed.
Okay.
And one more point, whatever those findings are, that does need to be backed up with some evidence. So we would, again, need a little bit further direction as to why you believe that those findings cannot be made so that staff can prepare the appropriate resolution.
So I'd like to raise a motion to find conditional use permit number 2023-02 in order to improve proposed development agreement authorizing cannabis retail use at 6231 Eastern Avenue. I'd like to raise that motion to approve it.
May I have a second?
May you repeat the motion?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you repeat that motion?
I guess am I reading it wrong? What am I reading wrong?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, I didn't understand what it was you just said.
I'm trying to raise a motion to authorize the conditional use permit.
So if the motion is to, what I'm understanding sounds like to approve the project, the motion would be to make a determination to find the project categorically exempt.
So we have to go.
Those
through
three steps. I would
okay.
just read those three steps. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
I thought it was just the first thing. Okay.
Yeah,
And
you
there's-
can take all three, but you have to make the determination first.
Okay. So first, I'd like to raise the motion to determine that the conditional use permit is categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. And then okay, and then I'd also like to raise a motion to adopt resolution PC 2024-01, approving CUP number 2023-072. Additionally, I'd like to raise a motion to adopt resolution PC 2024-02, recommending that the city council adopt an ordinance.
Thank you, Vice Chair. May I have a second?
I, Commissioner Mendez, second the motion.
Secretary, will you please give us a roll call vote?
Sure. Commissioner Leon,
I'm going to abstain from voting today.
okay. Commissioner Mendez,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Barcena,
No.
and Chairperson De La Rosa.
No.
City Attorney, do you want to let us know the outcome of that?
The motions fail.
The motion failed.
That is correct. The motion failed.
We will now begin with item number 2 on the agenda. At this time, I will open public hearing at 7:20 PM. May we have the staff report, please?
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners, staff, and public. For the record, my name is Mona Mosayed, Associate Planner with the Bell Gardens Planning Division. And this presentation is to discuss Site Plan Review 2022-087 as it relates to the development of a self-storage facility at 6818 Suva Street. The applicant, Bijan Javaharian, is representing as one of the property owners of Kenfield Development LLC. They are requesting first a finding that SPR number 2022-087 is categorically exempt from the provisions of the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to section 15332, class 3-2, infill development on fewer than 5 acres surrounded by urban uses. And 2, adoption of a resolution approving site plan review number 2022-087 to allow the development of a new 4-story, 126,316 square foot self-storage facility, including a 472 square foot leasing office. The subject site is located at 6818 Suva Street. The site was formerly zoned M1 Light Industrial and was updated to R3 during the land use and zoning map updates. However, the applicant submitted their application and was deemed complete February 22, 2023. Thus, the light industrial zone usage is applied as a legal non-conforming use. To the immediate north of the site, there is an industrial use, as is to the east and west. To the immediate south of the site, it is vacant and was rezoned for R3 use. The site is currently vacant with no landscaping nor paving. The subject site is located on the southern side of Suba Street, and the proposed structure site is located at the southeastern side of the property with parking in the rear or southwest portion. And abutting the northern side of the building, there is one drive approach to the site off Suba Street. The applicant is proposing a 4-story, 874-unit self-storage structure. The proposed 126,306 square foot self-storage facility includes a leasing office, 2 restrooms, and is of contemporary design. Mr. Jones, could you pass that material board to the commissioners? A material board is present to give a sense of the colors and materials proposed. The applicant's request is consistent with the City of Bell Gardens general plan, specifically land use policy number 4, which would promote the subject site to maintain, rehabilitate with a new permitted industrial use and private investment, ensuring compliance with necessary environmental requirements, and land use policy number 5 promotes proposed use would stimulate local employment, increase property values and community stability, and enhance economic vitality of existing local businesses by providing a use that serves the residents, workers, and visitors. Also, the proposed meets the requirements of section 9.58.040 of the Bell Gardens Municipal Code. With this presentation, staff recommends the Planning Commission take the following action. A finding that SPR number 2022-087 is categorically exempt from the provisions of CEQA, and adoption of a resolution approving site plan review number 2022-87 to allow the development of a new 4-story, 126,306 square foot self-storage facility, including a 472 square foot leasing office. Staff and applicant are open to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Musia. Any questions from the commission?
I don't know if the applicant is available.
Yes, the applicant is available.
Just wondering if the applicant had anything else to add to that.
No, at this point, nothing till we hear some, or my partner is there in person.
I'm very Sundar, I'm the partner, owner of the property. This vacant lot has been there forever and useless. So we did a study that's radius of 5 miles. Most of the self-storage is 90 or 95% occupied. And the city is in need of that. Although we can build over there according to general plan, about 100 units of the residential, but that one is going to bring some traffic impact, self-storage, going to be a clean job, bring revenue for the city, and we'll have a nice landscaping. We have a good architect, and the design, I think, is perfect for the city.
Thank you much, sir. Appreciate it.
Any other questions or comments? If not, we will open public comments for this item. Secretary, would you please announce the instructions for public participation?
Sure. The members of the public will now have an opportunity to speak on public hearing item number 2. Please state your name for the record before addressing your comments to the members of the Planning Commission. Each speaker and written comments are limited to 3 minutes. Callers wishing To make a comment, may do so at this time by dialing *9 from your phone when instructed. Dial *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining through the Zoom app may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature on Zoom and select the unmute or microphone icon when instructed. We will begin to hear from members of the public that are physically present in the council chamber. If you haven't done so already, please submit your comment cards now for item number 2. It looks like we don't have anybody here in the public wishing to speak on this item. I can go ahead and see if there's anyone in the chat line. If there's anyone wishing to speak on this item, go ahead and press *6 to unmute yourself. And Chairperson, it looks like we don't have anybody wishing to speak on this item.
Thank you very much. If there are no objections by the Planning Commission, I will close public participation. Commissioners, any final questions or comments? No. All right, I will close public hearing at 7:29 PM. May I have a motion?
I'd like to raise a motion for the planning commission to determine that the site plan review number 2022-08 is categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. And also raise a motion that the planning commission adopt the planning commission resolution number PC 2024-03 approving SPR number 2022-087.
Perfect. May I have a second?
I second.
You. Planning Secretary, will you please give us a roll call?
Commissioner Leon,
Yes.
Commissioner Mendez,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Barcena,
Yes.
and Chairperson De La Rosa.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
And the last day to appeal this item is Thursday, March 7th at 5:00 PM.
Chair De La Rosa, I would like to request a 5-minute recess.
Granted. Recess at 7:30 PM. All right, the meeting will now come to order at 7:41 PM. I would like to entertain a motion to reconsider item 1.
I'd like to raise a motion so that we can reconsider item 1.
All right, I second that. Planning Secretary, could we please conduct a roll call vote?
Sure. Commissioner Leon,
Yes.
Commissioner Mendez,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Barcena,
Yes.
and Chairperson De La Rosa.
Yes.
4-0, motion passes.
So we reopened this motion for a determination of finality. There are findings that will be presented and brought back by staff. So we're exploring this further.
Thank you.
Chair, if I may ask, are we looking for a new motion?
Correct. Correct.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion that the planning commission find this CUP does not conform with neighborhood standards, and the planning staff present new findings that conform with neighborhood standards.
Commissioner Barcena, if I may clarify, is the motion to direct staff to come back with a resolution that it finds or that determines the findings cannot be made?
Yes. So I would reframe it in that way.
And if you could please direct staff as to exactly what concerns you have that would educate the, or that would support that those findings could not be made.
So the reasoning behind the fact that I don't think this fits the neighborhood context is just the fact that this is right next to a residence, and we've heard public comment about the way that it would affect them. Another thing that was brought to my attention by the spokesperson for the company was they talked about all the lighting that was going to be used for security reasons. While I applaud the use of the security measure, I also think that it can disturb residents and disturb people in the location just because it'll be so bright. And I imagine these lights will be on all night to ensure safety precautions. So I just don't think that it'll fit the neighborhood context given the residences that abut this proposed CUP.
We have a second.
On my end, I just need clarification where we're at and maybe under an understanding of the procedural way of moving forward of either approving or disapproving so that commissioners are in the know of what would be the next steps by pushing for a motion in favor or against.
Commissioner, there is an open motion at the time. I'd like to get direction from the legal counsel with this open motion. Do they need to take action on the motion before we can go forward? Answer that question.
Could you repeat the question? So before we can proceed with a motion of either approving or disapproving, if we may get an understanding of the procedural events when an applicant gets denied, how that looks like after fact, so that the commissioners have a better understanding on how to move forward with the current motion?
Sure. So if the council moves forward with the recommendation to deny the project for reasons of public safety, health and welfare, neighborhood context, There would be 2 resolutions brought back to the Planning Commission that ultimately determined that those findings cannot be made based on the comments made by Commissioner Barcena. And those resolutions would ultimately be adopted by your commission. And next procedural steps would be, that would be the end game for the CUP unless the applicant were to appeal that decision before the city council. Additionally, the recommendation not to approve the development agreement would also move forward to the city council as to not approve the ordinance or the development agreement. So this would allow basically for both of these items to move forward as have been proposed before the city council if the applicant wished to appeal the decision to deny the project. I apologize, as it currently stands, there's no determination that's been made or either to approve or deny the project.
Thank you so much. Now I understand there's a motion on the table, right? So may you repeat the motion that's on the table?
So the motion would be for the planning commission to deny the CUP because it doesn't conform with neighborhood standards and for health and safety reasons.
And also to not recommend approval of the development agreement for the same reasons.
And to not approve the development agreement for the same reasons.
I second that. Planning Secretary, will you please conduct a roll call vote?
Sure. Commissioner Leon,
Abstain?
Commissioner Mendez,
I'll say no.
Vice Chairperson Barcena,
Yes.
and Chairperson De La Rosa.
Yes.
The motion carries.
I believe the motion, it is not, correct?
There needs to be a minimum of 3 votes, one way or the other. So once again, there's no majority vote, so there's no finality on this. So you're in the same boat you were in 20 minutes ago.
So can we openly discuss to try to?
You can continue to discuss it. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess my question is to my fellow planning commissioners is what do we need to talk about in order to get a final vote on this? Because it's not passing because we need 3 people to vote in favor, correct? Or three votes in a certain way. And currently
Correct.
we're at 2 denying and 1 agreeing and then 1 abstaining.
If I may start on my end. My understanding as a planning commissioner is that we need to vote impartially when it comes to an applicant coming to our doorstep. And what I see in front of me is that we need to approve based on land usage, right? Under all the rules and regulations that the city and the state and either federal have bestowed for companies to move forward in establishing a company in our city. So what I gathered today with the applicant is that they are being transparent. They have years of experience and they're going to be working alongside with the law enforcement along with providing community involvement. My understanding is this is a huge potential opportunity when it comes to revenue coming to the city. And on top of that, we've heard from the applicant that they're willing to be involved with the community. Earlier, I did ask if we may revisit or explore where we could add more, and you might consider this an aggression move. But, again, instead of a 10% of gross receipts to make it 15%, as other neighboring cities have done so. And also with their community involvement, I think I heard 10 years. And if the applicant, or if it can be a condition, to add 15 years instead of 10 years. You know, we want to have long lasting relationships with our establishments here. So I hope that can be maybe something that we could add so that that could help us in making a majority vote either in favor or not in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Mendez. And on my end, I would like to see more comparative data along with the city of Cudahy, for example, seeing what their financials look like, you know, with the 50% tax implemented. And also the fact that, you know, it should meet, you know, the neighborhood's context. So that is my stance.
I could just reiterate what I've said before. We can't deny that this has financial benefits for our city. It definitely will help in funding various programs for our youth. With that being said, I just think that, like I've said before, it doesn't fit the neighborhood context in the sense that it being a commercial enterprise, it's going to bring certain extra challenges to this part of the neighborhood. And it being the specific type of commercial enterprise that it is. We've already talked about the ways that we're gonna have added security in this this location with the numerous amount of guards that are gonna be there. And on top of that, just the fact that there's gonna be an influx of people. And while I'm happy that there is a decent amount of parking, I hope that street parking won't be taken up. I still can imagine that our already stressed infrastructure in the sense that we don't have enough parking is going to be even more aggravated, especially for the community residents that live adjacent to this property. So that is just one of the many concerns that I have. Yeah, I just want to re-echo that sentiment.
Just to piggyback off my colleagues here, I know it may sound contradictory to you know, our decision today about what we're saying about wanting to bring investment, being pro-business, and allowing, you know, companies like yourself to come into our cities. Obviously, the financial benefit that it would bring. But for me personally, just going back on to looking at further research, our neighboring cities, you know, and even providing that again to our constituents here about the benefits. So just going back to the drawing board, for me personally, looking at the benefits, looking how it compares to other cities, you know, percentages, you know, obviously this is all cash transactions that, you know, will be literally, you know, brought to the city, right? So how do we monitor that? How do we make sure that, you know, we're acting in good faith, especially with other companies and neighboring cities? I'd like to get some input to see, you know, what has been, you know, the pros and cons to them. Especially considering other cities have done it, you know, for many years prior. So that's my take on it.
I would like to propose a motion. Motion to have city staff obtain more information from neighboring cities in regards to financials, financial information, revenue, debt, you know, all of that relevant information, and then revisit the item in the future, as well as considering neighborhood context as well.
Mr. Chair, if I can clarify, are you asking to table this item until the next planning commission meeting?
Correct.
Thank you.
I'll second that motion.
Planning Secretary, could we please conduct a roll call vote?
Commissioner Leon,
Yes.
Commissioner Mendez,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Barcena,
Yes.
and Chairperson De La Rosa.
Yes.
Motion passes to table this item to the next regular scheduled planning commission meeting.
Thank you. We will now move over with item number 3 on the agenda. At this time, I will open public hearing at 7:57 PM. May we please have the staff report, Mr. Flores?
Yes, just 1 second. Good evening, Chair, Commissioners and staff and public. Today, for the record, my name is Adrian Flores, Associate Planner with the City of Bell Gardens Planning Division, and this presentation will discuss the Conditional Use Permit and Development Agreement 2023-067 as it relates to the City and Department of Cannabis Control storefront retail license request at 5605 Gage Avenue for Off the Charts. The applicant Sean Maddox presenting Norman Youssef and Off the Charge are requesting 1, to find that the project is categorically exempt from the provisions of the California Quality Act pursuant to state CEQA guidelines. 2, adopt resolution 2024-04 approving conditional use permit number 2023-067, to authorize the cannabis retail use and California Department of Cannabis Control to issue a Type 10 storefront retailer license at 5605 Gage. And lastly, recommending the City Council approval of an ordinance to enter into and execute a development agreement to establish certain development rights in exchange for public benefits for up to 10 years. A little bit on the site, the subject site is located within the MU zone, which is it's considered the mixed use, and it's also located in the land use designation of mixed use commercial and residential. To the immediate north of the site are high density residential uses, and immediate to the south, east, and west are commercial uses. No other storefront cannabis retail uses exist within radius of 1,500 feet in size, nor were any sensitive uses identified within 600 feet of the subject site. As seen above in the images, the upper from Gage Avenue and the lower from the alley north of the site. The current site condition reflect an existing food market and a legal non-conforming light recycling center. According to city records, the recycling center has a current city-based license, and the use has existed on the site since 1994. Due to rezoning at the subject site, which prohibits recycling centers in the MU zone, the recycling center is considered a legal non-conforming use. Bell Gardens Police Department has expressed concerns about the recycling center, indicating that the business attracts frequent foot traffic, loitering, including transients and narcotic users. To address this concern, proposed CUP condition number 82 will require the recycling center to cease operations and require the applicant to remove all structures and supporting equipment from the subject site. And as you can see in the photos, located at the rear of the property, adjacent to the alley, is where the existing recycling center is located. That will be soon to cease operations. With the depicted site plan, note that the subject site is located on the north side of Gage Avenue. The existing structure on the site is 6,046 square feet and is located adjacent to the west property line of the subject site. The applicant proposes to subdivide the structure and conduct tenant improvements on 2,486 square feet of the existing structure for the cannabis retail use purpose. The remaining 3,560 square foot of the building is proposed to house the existing food market, and tenant improvements will be reviewed under a separate proposal for that use. Located east of the structure is the parking lot consisting of 20 parking spaces, including 2 ADA spaces. While 16 parking spaces are required for the uses on this site, the existing site provides more parking than what is required. Lastly, there are 2 driver approaches off of Gage Avenue. The east driveway approach is for ingress only, and the west driveway approach would be for egress only. The applicant is proposing a contemporary storefront design that would comply with Bell Gardens development standards. The rendering shown here is for illustration purposes, and the applicant will file for a separate signage permit. Now, a little into the retail floor plan, the proposed 2,486 square foot suite for the proposed cannabis retail use would include 4 distinct spaces. The entry would be on the east side of the building, off of the parking lot, and you would be entering into the secure check-in lobby. And then where the customers will access the retail space after checking in the lobby. Lastly, there is area shown in green designated for office and staff areas, inclusive of an office, storage, vault, and vendor areas. Now, if approved, the CUP would impose conditions of approval that would require the applicant to ensure the subject site is kept in a neat and orderly manner, that debris and graffiti are removed in a timely manner, prohibit certain activities, including on-site consumption of cannabis. Now, for security, the applicant facility would feature a on-site security guards 24 hours of the day, including an interior guard, day guard, overnight guard, and security director. Now, a little bit more on security. The applicant will deploy at least 2 part-time and 2 full-time armed security officers. At least 1 guard will be present at the applicant's facility 24 hours a day or at an alternative arrangement approved by the police department. Security personnel would be stationed between 1, the main entrance, 2, the retail area, 3, the vendor intake delivery staging, 4, roving patrols of all departments within the facility's interior, 5, out the hallways outside the limited access fulfillment storage room, and lastly, roving exterior security sweeps would be conducted. For age restrictions, all employees are at least 21 years old in age. Patrons of the cannabis retail use storefront that would purchase produce would be at least 21 years old or 18 years with a medical recommendation pursuant to state law. For hours of operation, they will be restricted Monday to Sunday, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. unless otherwise conditioned or allowed. The last delivery order would be placed by 9 p.m. and all delivery vehicles returned no later than 10 p.m. Now, the proposed development agreement would permit a cannabis retail use at the subject site for initial 5-year term, subject to an option to extend the term for an additional 5 years for a total of 10 years. The applicant would provide an annual benefit, community benefit, in the amount of $100,000 upon the effective date for the development agreement and renewed on an annual basis. The applicant would also be required to pay quarterly community benefit in the amount that is equivalent to 10% of gross receipt sales on a quarterly basis. 80% of all of the community benefits would be dedicated toward the city's youth and educational programming, and for the city's housing programs, the benefits would be utilized for youth programming, after-school programs, sports programming, personal enrichment classes, or capital improvements on city-owned properties. And for housing programming, long-range planning, including but not limited to affordable housing, rent stabilization, and tenant protection efforts, and other planning efforts. Now, the applicant's request is consistent with the City of Bell Gardens General Plan, Land Use Policy 3, 4, and 5. The project meets requirements section 9.50.050 of the Bell Gardens Municipal Code, basis for approval or denial of conditional use permit, and the project meets the requirements of section 9.20.160 cannabis retail conditional use of the Bell Gardens Municipal Code. The proposed 2,486 square feet tenant improvements would provide a conditionally approved cannabis retail sales in a building consistent with development standards contained in Bell Gardens Municipal Code, Chapter 9.12, Commercial Zones, and the development agreement would facilitate the orderly development of the subject site and help ensure certain development rights in exchange for public benefits, including funding for the city's housing and youth and recreational programs for up to 10 years. Now, it's staff recommendation that the Planning Commission take the following actions. 1, determine that the project is categorically exempt from CEQA based on the common sense exemption and the existing facilities exemption. 2, adopt a resolution approving the conditional use permit authorizing tenant improvements to 2,486 square feet space of an existing commercial building and operations of a cannabis retail use at the subject site. And adopt a resolution recommending to the City Council approval of an ordinance authorizing the city to enter into and execute a development agreement to establish certain development rights for up to 10 years in exchange for certain public benefits. That concludes my presentation. The applicant is here for any questions and a presentation, and as well as staff and city attorney are available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from commissioners?
Yeah, my question is directed towards planning staff. Is there any way to put back on the screen the picture of the lot?
Sure, give me 1 second here. Now, are we speaking of the current site condition,
No, the other one.
the
it was like-
renderings,
No.
site plan?
Yes, that one.
Okay.
So, if you can make it bigger, please.
Sure.
So, the adjacent property, what is that adjacent property?
What adjacent property? Are we talking to the east of the property?
I'm not sure which direction it is, but the one on the top.
Sure. Okay, so that's the east. So east of the subject site is mixed use zone, and it's existing with a car wash.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
If I may ask, in terms of formality, are we gonna open it up to public comments, or can a commissioner go ahead and file a motion?
Yeah, public comment comes first.
Thank you.
This question is mainly directed towards staff and perhaps even the applicant. So from my understanding, based on the proposed site plan, the structure would be split into two. Are we suggesting that the current tenants, which is the Mega Mart, would they take the striped half of the proposed site plan, or how would this be drawn in the picture?
Sure, yeah. So per the application submittal, it is proposed that the existing Mega Mart will be located at the adjacent tenant. However, that will be reviewed under a separate submittal and permit. But yes, to answer your question, the Mega Mart will be is proposed to be located at the adjacent unit.
Commissioners, any other questions?
No questions.
I have a question. As far as putting a restriction on the time that this establishment can be open, is that something that the planning commission can recommend? Like limiting the time instead of it being from, I think it's 10 to 10, it being from 10 to 9?
Yes, that's a condition of approval that's associated with the CUP and the, if the planning commission were to approve the CUP, it can be with the modification of hours as proposed.
Okay, I just wanted to share that with my fellow commissioners, just because while here there is definitely more, I guess, other commercial uses. We have the automotive uses, and then we have some more retail. I'm still a little hesitant at the fact that there is some residential apartments there. I mean, 10 o'clock is late to some people. Some people wake up early for work. And if there's children there, who may be getting ready to go to sleep, I think it's important to consider that, customers can be coming to this establishment relatively late. And whether, I mean, even if they're not being noisy or loud, their cars and walking to their cars and stuff like that is still going to create a disturbance. And I think if we do approve it, at the very least, limiting it from 9 to 10 could potentially help diminish the disturbance to the residents that live adjacent to this proposed establishment.
I have a question in regards to the security. Given that it's a market, being adjacent to the proposed site, would security or any of those services also be offered to the tenant adjacent to the proposed site?
Sean Maddox on behalf of the applicant. So currently proposed, there'd be 2 guards on site. One would be interior, one would be exterior. The exteriors would also provide roving patrols. So those roving patrols would be accessible to our neighbor. Obviously, good neighbor policy is tantamount to any cannabis establishment. So working with that neighbor about any concerns they had with security, if they needed an extra guard, working with them on that. Fortunately, we are a business, so we can't just go hiring 5 security guards to provide security for everybody. But I think understanding their security needs, we do plan to have cameras throughout. Also, the exterior of their portion of the premises, not on the interior because that's under their purview. But yes, our security presence would be available to them. And I think having a good, strong relationship with them would allow us to provide additional security and safety for the overall property.
Thank you.
If I may, to keep it consistent with the last other applicant, if I may ask the following questions to the applicant. What would be examples of your community involvement with City of Bell Gardens?
So with Bell Gardens, we're offering up to 40 hours paid community service for all of our employees annually to donate time at local organizations. We do toy drives pretty much at all of our stores. As mentioned earlier by the other applicant, it is hard to find community partners that we're able to donate to and work with. What we end up doing is a lot of faceless donations, right? We're not expecting Boys and Girls Club to put up a banner for a pot shop, but those types of things would be sources that we'd go to. Another thing that we found really successful in other communities, we actually just did one this past Saturday, are veteran and cancer patient giveaways. So we work with outside consultants and vendors to donate free cannabis to patients in need from the community. It's been a huge success. We just did one in San Francisco again this past Saturday. It's something that we'd be looking to implement here as well. Other community organization work that we've done in the past, we've done beach and park cleanup as part of that 40 hours of community service for our employees. We've done Shop with a Cop. I don't know if they do that in Bell Gardens, but it's a really cool thing that we've done in some other communities where essentially it bridges the gap between youth and police by providing an opportunity for youth to go on a shopping spree with a police officer during the Christmas time for underserved families. We focus on local hiring. I think the majority of our stores are at least 66% or higher. We've got an amazing diversity, equity, and inclusion partner, and we actually have 5 social equity dispensaries in Los Angeles. And those social equity partners are part of our board, and they're part of making sure that all of our stores hire with diversity, equity, and inclusion in mind. On that note, we also have plenty of social equity brands that we carry in our stores to kind of give back to the, underserved populations and the disproportionately criminalized populations in the cannabis industry. It's a lot of them. I'm sure we do more that I've missed, but it's important to us. It's an interesting kind of double-edged sword because communities want it. In some communities, we have specific, hey, you've got to give 2%, you've got to give 1%. 10% is a lot. I know you guys are kind of talking about that. We're in 19 jurisdictions in California right now. a lot of communities we see, 7% plus 2%, and then we get to control that 2% and where it goes into the community. What I do like about the development agreement and where the funds are going in the city is that it is going to youth and homelessness, which are, initiatives that we look at in almost every community that we serve.
Thank you. Next question is beautification measures. Do you have anything that you guys plan on doing that would also bring more community involvement when it comes to beautification measures?
So we've already gone and done a door-to-door, talking with our neighbors. What we'd probably do prior to doing our final plan submission is also hosting an open house to run some of the final plan ideas by community members. I think the beautification of the site, you saw the current conditions of it. I think beyond just updating the facade and adding some visual interest to it, the removal of the recycling center is a huge item that we've learned from the city has been an ongoing nuisance. It's brought narcotics use. It's brought a lot of homelessness to the area. So that alone is, I don't know if a beautification or revitalization effort, but something that we'd be doing to the site. But yeah, re-landscaping the entire site. You've heard it ad nauseum because you guys are on planning commission, but drought tolerant California native is obviously what we're going to do because we want to be environmentally sensitive. But, I think that would all go through a full design review as part of our planning submission before building. And again, I think community outreach is extremely important. We haven't sent out mailers yet. If approved tonight, we'd probably send those out within 7 days of the final approval. Usually there's 7 to 10 days for an appeal on this. We have the addresses, we have the statements written, so we really want to invite our neighbors to participate in the overall community design. In other stores that we've had, we have done murals. Murals usually have a pretty complicated process to get approval from the city, but that's also something that we'd be willing to look into.
Great. Thank you. You've already touched bases, but I just wanted to hear it again. When it comes to hiring local community members, what the percentage will look like when it comes to staff at that site?
Like I said, all of our stores, I think, are at 66% or above. So that's a commitment that we'd want to hit. We'd obviously like to go above, and a lot of that just depends on the feedback that we're getting from the community, whether that's working with the Chamber of Commerce or, local departments within the city to source applicants. The other applicant nailed it pretty well, that once you start hiring locally, it does kind of spread like wildfire and you do get a lot of referrals. We also feel that, the outreach events that we have, the open houses and things like that give us a real opportunity to source from the community. And it's good for us because not only are they our employees, but they're also taking pride in something that they're doing in their community. They're going to share it with their family and friends and, hopefully be referring customers. So, local hiring, it goes two ways. It definitely provides benefits to the community, but it also provides benefits to us because we're working with employees who know the community, who can give us feedback. And just a note on that, we do pay living wages to our employees at all of our locations. So fair wages within the community would be an extremely important aspect of our local hiring as well.
Thank you. As I've shared before, I think many of us are with an understanding that many of these dispensaries or establishments require a lot of capital, because it's a lot of out-of-pocket costs just to come, in front of us today. On your end, do you guys have the necessary capital to move forward with all these out-of-pocket costs? And would you be willing to show proof?
Yes, we'd be willing to provide proof of capitalization to the city. We do that for pretty much every permit we apply to throughout the state. As I mentioned earlier, we've opened 19 stores in California alone. That would be pretty hard to do if we didn't have the capital to back it. We're also opening out of state as well, have one currently in New Mexico. So yes, we are adequately capitalized. One thing that I would like to mention in terms of capital is that we're a family-owned and operated store. We're not a big chain. I guess with 19 stores, you're somewhat of a chain, but at the end of the day, husband and wife, Norman and Darlene Youssef, are our CEO and COO. They're heavily involved in everything. They're a lot of the financial backing of this. We don't have some big board of people, coming to every city council hearing from us, which is why when I give my presentation, it'll be fast because I've only got 3 minutes. Maybe Matt will give me an extra 3. But we are family owned and operated. We've been able to expand based off of the success of our stores, based off of the successful model that the uses have built. We've been very fortunate in that. And, we hope to extend that success to your city.
Thank you. My last question is, as it was stated by the report from city staff, there's 5-year commitment with an additional as an option for another 5 years. What's your take for after you've successfully completed the first 5 years? Would you guys look into it, or will you guys ask for renegotiation on those terms?
It's a city attorney question on whether or not we could extend beyond the 10. At the end of the day, there's 2 things. One, we need to be a successful business, but we also need to be a successful partner to the community. So in terms of renegotiating, I think that that's all just based off of market forces. Obviously, if our business is successful, 10, 15 years, great. The longer we can ensure our entitlement, the better for us. I will say, and I know it was mentioned earlier, a lot of our stores are used to a 6-7% taxation. And I know you guys sat here and said, oh, well, would you be open to 15%? The pushback from that isn't necessarily, one, the higher you go, the smaller your margins you get because it affects the prices that you're passing on to consumers, but it also affects our top line, which affects the actual dollars coming in that are going to get taxed. If we've got cities like Artesia that approved up to 15, but adopted a 7%. And other cities around here that are doing 7, 6%, and we're stuck at a 10%, and that minimizes our opportunity to bring business into the city, to bring tax revenue into the city based off of the 10%. That would be a consideration on renegotiation. I'm sorry, I don't want to sit here and be a yes man. I want it to be an open, collaborative discussion with the city. So I don't think, as of today, that in 5-10 years, we'd really be renegotiating the bottom line. I like where the money's going. I think I mentioned earlier, the city's got some really good causes of where the 10% is being sent. But I do think that there are business and market forces that are beyond my simple attorney mind, that I think would be revisited in collaboration with the city over time.
Thank you so much.
I have a question. I think it's for city staff, but maybe the applicant can answer it as well. As far as I think it's a site plan. Yeah. With the site plan, what is the is there going to be a fence to the east next to that property, or what's going to be there?
Yeah, so there will be a required fencing within the perimeter of the property. So there will be a fence installed.
And is that just like a chain link fence? What kind of, enclosure will it
I
be?
think there's already a wrought iron fence on the perimeter. We'd probably end up repainting, refinishing that fence as part of our overall improvements. Chain link doesn't really do it for us security wise. So yeah, I think you're looking at something wrought iron, hopefully semi-decorative that doesn't break the budget.
And then I guess a follow-up question to that, again, probably for city staff, but maybe for the applicant. Is putting like a wall there something that's feasible? I think that has added security measures, but it also has the benefit of creating a buffer of sound and light, since the sound and light wouldn't be able to go through a full concrete wall as opposed to wrought irons.
So wall at this time is not required. If you're asking if it's feasible, that would be a question for the applicant. That's something you guys would be interested in.
I think, we'd be willing to consider it. I assume that you're talking a wall on that back alley, correct? On the, I think it's like the northwest portion, the site plan doesn't show well, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the hard thing would be working with the planning or building department to make sure that we have proper ingress, egress, and that we're meeting all kind of necessary traffic requirements. But if we could do that, I think we'd be willing to consider it.
Okay, I see what you're talking about now. I think we're talking about 2 different sides of it. I think can the site plan be put back up on the screen, please? Thank you. So the top of it is the east, correct?
That's correct.
And remind me again, what is to the east right there?
It's an existing car wash business.
Okay.
Adrian, do you have a picture of that side, with the site conditions?
Oh, I don't think I have an angle. Let me check here. You can see a portion here. It's a block wall with wrought iron.
Okay, I think I had the directions mixed up in my head, and I couldn't visualize it without that. So, given that it's the car wash, yeah, I don't have as many concerns about it. I thought it was facing the opposite direction with the residences, and that was more my concern. But if it's just a car wash, then I don't see as much of a need for the concrete wall, and I think the iron rods would be sufficient.
And just for clarification, Chair, the area along the alley, if that's what you're referring to, that's where you have the residences adjacent to the alley. And so that's where you have the existing tubular steel fencing, which I believe, is that where you were going with on the block wall, or were you identifying that as continuing with the tubular steel fencing?
Yeah, I was initially suggesting that the section with the alley be concrete wall, but given, I think the applicant made a good point as far as the ingress and egress of the establishment.
Again, to keep it consistent, how do you feel about having, potentially a competitor, north of Eastern Avenue, just close to, the 500 feet range?
We'd love it to not have a competitor, but we also understand market forces. We understand the decisions that you guys are bound by in terms of what staff's recommending, what's approved, and what can pass. As was mentioned earlier, we work in cities where, we've got a competitor a stone's throw away. And we've had really good relationships with competitors. You saw I shook hands with the majority of those guys tonight. We know them. They're known operators. And I think that that's usually a good thing for a city, that you've got people who are known operators talking to each other, because that means that you guys have at least attracted a good applicant pool of people who are in multiple jurisdictions. We believe strongly in our business model, and we've been very successful in competitive markets. So, while some people might begrudge competition, it's obviously nicer to not have it. But, for instance, we're in Palm Springs right now. We have 2 stores in Palm Springs. They have 16 dispensaries in Palm Springs. Our 2 stores bring in 50% of that city's tax revenue. So we're 1/8, which is about 12.5% of the actual number, but we're 50% of the tax revenue. So, we do have a good business model. It's low margin, right? We're passing our savings off to the consumers. We're not making these crazy margins, but we do a high volume of sales accordingly, which brings a lot of tax revenue into the cities. And we've been able to be successful throughout the state in some very tough markets. So we believe in ourselves. But, I do think at the end of the day, Costa Mesa was mentioned earlier, and I think the planning staff over there is kind of trying to find ways to prevent these things from being next door to each other, because it does kind of just become, I don't think necessarily a nuisance, because we have security and all of these things there, but I think for the community, it just becomes overwhelming. So I think, things like 1,500-foot over concentration considerations, right? And Palm Springs actually did that. I think at one point they were allowed within 500 feet of each other, and then industrial areas, they could be closer, but Palm Springs all of a sudden said, hey, okay, we don't want more than 3 within 1,500 feet. So, I think that there's non-business considerations for it. But at the end of the day, we do play well with the others. We know a lot of the big players in the industry, and we're comfortable operating alongside of them.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission, comments?
Yeah, hi. I know we didn't ask the other applicant, but my colleagues here mentioned about the the idea of visiting, closing shop earlier. And I understand in a report, it was mentioned that, revenue or whatnot might be affected. I don't know to the degree of 1 hour, but would you be, open to, that change?
Yeah, I think, definitely at this point, it's something that we'd be open to. I think, long term, as we saw a lot of other businesses open, if we were the only business in town that was open till 9, that could be a consideration and a factor that would affect us as a business. And I think, partially an unfair factor. So if this was asked of everybody to be, closing at 9, I'd say wholeheartedly we'd accept it. I'd even say at this stage in the process, we'd be willing to accept it if we could come back and rediscuss with Planning Commission if, other applicants were allowed to stay open later, because again, it would feel like an unjust impact on us at that point. But I do think at this point, we'd definitely be willing to accept that if that was one of the conditions of approval.
Thank you very much. Any final comments, questions?
I have a comment. For the sake of keeping it consistent, it's not that I want to pass a motion, but I just want to bring it up to the table as an open discourse. If we may also table it so that city staff can follow up with us for next meeting on that data that was asked earlier.
Commissioner, we need to open up the hearing to the public first and take public comments.
My apologies.
Thank you. With that said, we will now open public comments for this items. Secretary, will you please announce the instructions for public participation?
The members of the public will now have an opportunity to speak on public hearing item number 3. Please state your name for the record before addressing your comments to the members of the Planning Commission. Each speaker and written comments are limited to 3 minutes. Callers wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by dialing *9 from your phone when instructed, and then dial *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining through the Zoom app may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature on Zoom and select the unmute or microphone icon when instructed. We will begin to hear from members of the public that are physically present in the council chambers. If you haven't done so already, please submit your comment cards now. And Chairperson, there was one comment already given to you for this item. Any other comment cards? If you can, please submit them now. Seeing none, then we can go ahead and proceed with the one that was already given to you, Chairperson.
Perfect. We have Sean Maddox, yes.
Off the charts. Off the charts is premier cannabis retailer. I'm not going to belabor a lot of these points because a lot of them were addressed in the questions asked earlier. We are a family-owned and operated retailer with 19 locations throughout the state of California, 1 location open in New Mexico, and stores opening in National City, Hemet, Riverside within the next year, and out of state New Jersey, Ohio, Michigan, Mississippi, and New Mexico. The proposed operations here would be a retail storefront and delivery. As mentioned earlier, this is an overall site plan. The site has adequate access off of Gage Avenue for both a separate ingress and egress, as well as exit and entrance into the back alley. I think one of the biggest benefits of this site, or what we're bringing to the site, is the removal of the current recycling center, which has presented itself as a nuisance to the community over years. Aside from that, we do have adequate parking, and we have gone to lengths to make sure that we're not putting an existing business out of business by bifurcating the property and providing, the other usage to the current Mega Mart grocery. This next slide is just a general floor plan, pretty standard cannabis. I think the only difference between what you saw earlier from the other applicant and ours is that we do have a secure lobby / check-in where IDs are verified before being allowed into the retail floor. As you can see, the dark portion of this diagram shows the limited access areas, which include a vault, office, product storage, and employee break areas. This next slide just shows you some of the overall design aesthetics of the site. And then finally, the last slide, we talked about it in some of the questions, community integration and security. Community integration is extremely important aspect of what we do in all cities that we enter into. As mentioned earlier, we've already done door-to-door with our neighbors and dropped off FAQs and solicited feedback. We plan on doing post-CUP mailers and having an open house to get additional feedback. We also will focus on local hiring and plan to become a member of the Bell Garden Chamber of Commerce in order to work with not only our local employees, but other local businesses. We have robust nuisance mitigation protocols that we've implemented across all 19 operational facilities. These include odor control plans, traffic control plans, and a 24/7 community liaison who's available to any resident within 500 feet, as well as the city 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I think most importantly here too is security. We've heard a lot about the nuisance that the existing recycling center has had, homelessness within the city, and the fact that we'll be having 24/7 on-site security will really go a long way to make this a safer area and a safer neighborhood for some of the, multi-residential units that are close to us. We appreciate staff's consideration and recommendation, and open for any other questions you guys have.
Commissioners, any questions, comments?
Chairperson, if I may, before you guys continue discussion, to see if there's anybody in the chat line wishing to speak on this item. If there's anybody in the chat line wishing to speak, you can go ahead and press *6 to unmute yourself. And it looks like there's not anyone in the chat line wishing to speak, Chairperson.
Thank you. I do have a question to the applicant. You mentioned there was already some sort of effort in community outreach by sending out, information towards, to the neighbors. Have you received any input on that?
We haven't received any feedback yet. It was done last week, and we provided phone, email, not only myself, but also our property liaison. So we haven't heard feedback, but unfortunately, we did not provide that FAQ in English and Spanish, which we're usually used to. I know that on the door-to-door discussions that we were able to speak in Spanish to some extent, but I know that it's a pretty large constituency here, which is why any further outreach would definitely include both versions of the pamphlet.
Thank you. So to clarify, the communications were only in English, or?
They're like
Oh, both.
the mouth to mouth
Oh,
were in both, but
gotcha.
it was print. We also provided a printed FAQ, which was
Gotcha.
on.
Sounds good. All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Commissioners, any other questions? Last call to the audience. If you would like to provide any comments or questions. All right, may I have a motion, from staff? If there are no additional questions or comments, in general to the planning commission, I will close public hearing at, let's see here, 8:40 PM. All right, having said that, is there a motion, by the planning commission?
Well, Commissioner Mendez would like to table this for next meeting after city staff can follow up with us on the data that was asked with the other item in the agenda today.
May I have a second?
I second that motion.
Planning Secretary, could we please conduct a roll call vote?
Commissioner Leon,
Yes?
Commissioner Mendez,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Barsena, and Chairperson De La Rosa.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0 to table this item to the next regular scheduled planning commission meeting.
All right, we will now open for items listed on the agenda. Secretary, will you please announce the instructions for public participation?
The members of the public will now have an opportunity to speak on agenda items. Please state your name for the record before addressing your comments to the members of the planning commission. Each speaker and written comment are limited to 3 minutes. Callers wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by dialing *9 from your phone. When instructed, dial *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining us through the Zoom app may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature on Zoom and select the unmute and microphone icon when instructed. We will begin to hear from members of the public that are physically present in the council chambers. If you haven't done so already, please submit comment cards now for items listed on the agenda. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and see if there's anybody wishing to speak on items listed on the agenda.
Nobody knew about this meeting was going to take place today, only a few of us. These people never went knocking on doors, because we live on that lot.
Sir, if you'd like to speak, there is a form you could submit. Would you like to come up? We would just like to get your name and for the record.
It could be anonymous too, right?
Yeah.
Yes, you could keep it anonymous.
Yes, I was saying that these people, I live on that block, and so the lady also, and we never see these people knocking on doors like he says he did. So I don't know. I'm pretty sure nobody, saw these people before on that block, because I live like 20 feet away from that property is. And, the market is right there where we parents take our kids, to buy, chips, candies and stuff like that. So I don't know, maybe the owner agreed to sell this property to these people, but we don't, we don't agree with, what having a cannabis shop around our block. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's no objection by the planning commission. I will close public participation for agendized items. Objection. All right. Now we'll move over to the consent calendar. Does any member of the planning commission wish to pull an item for separate discussion? All right. May I have a motion to approve items number 45 on the consent calendar?
I'd like to raise a motion to approve items numbers 4 and 5 on the consent calendar.
Thank you. May I have a motion, second?
I'll second the motion.
Planning Secretary, will you please conduct a roll call vote?
Sure. Commissioner Leon,
Yes.
Commissioner Mendez,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Barcena,
Yes.
and Chairperson De La Rosa.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. Now, public comment is now open for items not listed on the planning commission agenda. Secretary, will you please announce the instructions for public participation?
The members of the public will now have an opportunity to speak on items not listed on the planning commission agenda. Please state your name for the record. Each speaker and written comments are limited to 3 minutes. Callers wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by dialing *9 from your phone. When instructed, dial *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining us to the Zoom app may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature on Zoom and select the unmute or microphone icon when instructed. We will begin to hear from members of the public that are physically present in the council chambers. If you haven't done so already, please submit your comment cards now. And Chairperson, we did receive one comment.
All right, so we do have a comment from Lincoln Fraga regarding rental ordinances. Right, having said that, is there any other comment on the web?
Let me check if we have anybody on the chat line. If there's anybody in the chat line wishing to speak on any item not listed on the agenda, if you can press *6 to unmute yourself, please. And it looks like we don't have anybody in the chat line, Chairperson.
Thank you so much. All right, if there's no objection by the planning commission, I will close public comments for non-agendized items. Commissioners, any questions, comments, before we adjourn the meeting?
Yeah, I do. I guess I'll start off. I just want to start off by saying to, thank the staff, Mr. Romers, and your department, our legal counsel. Obviously, this is a very contentious topic. I am sure that my colleagues and I all, share the same sentiment about looking at what's best for the interest for our community. I understand everyone here is doing that. But me personally, coming back to the planning commission, I understand information is pretty online, but just given this agenda item on Friday and having to come up with this decision in a couple of days, that's why I do appreciate that we had the chance to table this item for the next meeting, just because, obviously I'd like to do some further research and look into, to help better come up with our decision. So again, I apologize if it's frustrating, but I hope you understand our position as community leaders, people that actually live in this community, and having to make those decisions. So again, I applaud you on your efforts in presenting these information, the reports, again, looking out for the best of our community. But I hope you understand, our point of view. But I look forward to the next meeting. And my last thing is, if it's okay, I'd like to see if maybe we could get some data on the permanent local housing allocation program, and how we would disperse those funding from when we got the grant or the monies per se, who we've helped, and maybe that might expand on homeless individuals too, just because I know there are stipulation to help those that are literally homeless. So if it's if we can get presented that data, that'd be great. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Leon. Any other questions, comments? I would just like to thank the legal team, staff, for helping us navigate, and making this decision. So, thank you so much for your efforts, all the data, the information that was provided to us, prior to this meeting. It's very helpful. Thank you so much, everyone.
Before you adjourn, Chair, there are two more things. We have staff comment that we missed, and we have the director on hand, Director Romo, that has some announcements or an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Chair, members of the Planning Commission, appreciate all your efforts tonight and never feel obligated to do anything. You know, you can ask questions. I mean, this is a public forum for you to be able to deliberate. So there's never a need to apologize to anybody. We here as staff are here to present you the information that we've researched, the facts that we've found, and ultimately to give you an opportunity to make a decision. Whichever decision you make, we're being objective, giving you that information. We don't have a dog in the game, let's say. I forget, I'm not sure that's the way you say it, but anyways, I want you to feel free to use your best judgment on any of these decisions. So yeah, ultimately too, I'm so glad that our commissioner here brought up the rental assistance and just the whole Cal Home. I'm happy to report, we're still moving forward with a Cal Home program, trying to do the down payment assistance and the residential rehab. We've had, I would say, at least 10 grantees that have received this. But unfortunately, there's not enough inventory out there. If there were more homes for sale, I think people would take advantage of this program. We do have 18 for sale homes coming soon, hopefully over at the former Burke Oil site. Right now, we got approved to go forward on the remediation after all the studies were done. So we're hoping that those 18 units, and there's also 82 rental units, are going to come online within the next couple of years. And then, of course, we have another 48 units that looks like they're still going to be moving forward over at 8,000 Bell Gardens. And those are going to be for sale townhomes. But again, I'm very happy to report that, yes, the Cal Home program is still moving forward. We also have the home occupation program, the HOP program. All in all, residents here can receive up to $175,000 for down payment assistance. It's quite a bit of money, Of course, they have to qualify for it, be within a certain income level. And I also want to report that we are just about to launch the PLHA, which is called the Permanent Local Housing Allocation Rental Assistance Program. This is through the Los Angeles County Development Authority. We received over the last 2 years quite a bit of money to move forward with different programs. At first, it was eviction defense. And now the money's got transferred over to do a rental assistance program. And we're going to have it up on the billboards, hopefully by next week. The flyers have already been sent out in the mail. And any residents that qualify will be able to receive 6 to 12 months of rental subsidies. And I'll tell you, based on the last program that the Recreation Community Services Department did, there's 40 applications already that are pending. So they're just waiting to be able to apply for the program. So if you know anybody that's having hardships with paying rent, let them know to come see us and we'll get them hooked up with that application. And that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. I have a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Steven, did you have some comments?
No, I think we're good now. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Have a second? Second that.
Second.
Meeting adjourned at 8:56 p.m.